Hey guys, tonight we slip beneath the paper-thin skin of old Edo, following the amber wink of lanterns that bob like fireflies over canals and crooked alleys. You tug your cloak tighter, not because the June air bites, but because rumor itself raises goosebumps across your forearms. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Then, slide into the comments and let me know your city and the time your bedside clock is whispering at you. If you're already tucked under the covers, check that your blanket isn't secretly a rolled map of old Edo. Trust me, cartography wrinkles faster than linen. Wiggle your toes as though testing river water. Let your shoulders drop out of your ears. Maybe give the pillow a ceremonial fluff. Remember, we're here to drift, not sprint through time. A quick sip of water wouldn't hurt either. Hydration is the unsung hero of historical travel. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step off the creaking ferry onto Nyanbashi, the bridge of all roads. A wooden spine linking the shogun's capital to every province stamped on a courier's parchment. Merchant, monk, and mischievous child braid their footsteps into one humming ribbon. Candlelight glances off damp planks, and somewhere a shamisen releases a note so blue it practically drips into the river. Yet the scent greeting you tonight isn't grilled unagi or barley tea. It's earthier, freshly turned soil mingled with river mist, as though the ground itself just exhaled after holding its breath all day. Your sandal slides on a slick board, and while you steady yourself, a pair of fishmongers trundle past, balancing wicker crates heavy with something that sloshes. Told you, mutters the one in a frayed indigo jacket, voice pitched low enough to disturb a candle flame. They thrashed until midnight, almost cracked the barrel. His partner nods, eyes searching the pilings beneath the bridge as if a tail might slap through at any moment. You exhale, heartbeat performing its own tiny tremor test. Official chronicles will someday stamp today with a calm black dot. No seismic event recorded. But everyone in Edo keeps a private ledger of omens. Rats fleeing cellars, dogs howling at blank rooftops, and most of all, catfish twisting in frantic spirals. Seismometers won't appear in Japanese court until Dutch glass tubes arrive decades later. For now, fishermen, barmaids, and samurai in the bathhouse rely on fishy hysterics to second-guess tectonic timing. Mainstream historians point out that Edo, later Tokyo, sprawls over the overlapping plates of Pacific fate. Quakes visit like uninvited relatives. Too often, too loud, always rearranging the furniture. The one every modern student learns first is the Ansei Edo earthquake of 1855, magnitude 7+, an event that turns bright floating world into splintered matchsticks. But your sandals scuffed the planks a good 20 years earlier, in 1835, when that catastrophe is still a nightmare no storyteller can yet swear by. You follow the smell of river water toward a night market where paper lanterns sway from bamboo poles. Vendors call prices for rice crackers and pickled plums, but the real currency tonight is information. One stall sells nothing but clay figurines of namazu-e, the monstrous whiskered catfish said to churn underground seas. Each statuette is painted with bulging eyes and a smirk, as though the creature knows a punchline you'd rather not hear. You pick one up. It's warm from lamp heat and heavier than expected, like it's holding a secret. Keep that in your bedding. The vendor advises, breath edged with sake. If it flips onto its back before dawn, get out of the house. You raise an eyebrow, asking if he offers refunds when the figurine proves lazy. He laughs. Kid, if that clay fish turns, money will be the least of your worries. Quirky fact incoming. During the Ansei era, certain street performers walked pet catfish in damp cloth harnesses, charging onlookers a few mon to stroke the earthquake oracle. Skeptics claimed the fish wriggled simply because linen tickled their bellies, yet pamphlets illustrating these spectacles sold faster than medicinal plasters. Proof that nothing moves product like a slippery mascot promising survival. You angle down a narrower lane where water gutters gleam like silver threads. Here, lanterns grow sparse and your shadow stretches until it loses edges. Outside a noodle stand, a chalkboard advertises Nightquake Soba, second bowl free if the dishes rattle. The joke earns a chuckle, But it also reminds you that Edo's wide avenues double as fire breaks. After a real tremor, flames perform encore acts more lethal than the shaking. So city officials design streets less for traffic flow and more for controlled burnout lanes. A sudden splash echoes from a sake brewery courtyard. Barrels have toppled, some rocking faintly though the air stands still. In a shallow pool, two catfish swirl like submerged compass needles, white bellies flashing under torchlight. The brewer waves you closer, claiming he installed the pond solely for quake alerts. When they spin opposite directions, he says, "I ring the tower bell. Everyone on this block owes me a drink if my alarm proves true." Historians still debate whether such homegrown systems saved lives or merely spiked neighborhood anxiety. You wander east toward the Sumida embankment, passing a Rakugo theater whose placard reads "The Catfish Who Sneezed." Inside, the storyteller kneels, fan flicking open like a fault line, describing a fisherman who tickles a giant namazu until it sneezes castles into rubble. The audience erupts, yet every laugh carries a jittery aftertaste. Humor spiced dread that even the bravest samurai can't fully swallow. Stepping back onto the quay, you lean over the railing. Far below, boats bob in dark water. You picture catfish brushing hulls like cats arching against a stranger's leg. Some adults claim certain namazu stretch longer than a surfboard, thick enough to bruise planks with one lazy swipe. Fishermen swear they felt jolts through or in keel when a giant spooked at noises no human ear could register. One sailor insists he once saw a lantern-lit fish glowing under the tide like a drifting star, but sake complicates eyewitness testimony. A public notice board creaks nearby. Fresh ink glistens on a parchment edict urging citizens not to confound public order with groundless rumors of animal forewarning. Irony drips thicker than the ink. By forbidding chatter, the magistrate certifies the rumor's potency. Two teenage rice porters read the notice, wide-eyed, words already hopping from parchment to gossip chain faster than a courier on horseback. Another detail surfaces. Edo authorities kept meticulous earthquake damage records. Contemporary geologists treat them like statistical gold. Patterns emerge. Neighborhoods built on reclaimed marsh quake worst, wells froth, and catfish leap onto riverbanks in frenzied arcs. Some diarists report eerie flashes darting along rooflines moments before the first jolt. Scholars still argue whether these earthquake lights are ionized air, optical illusion, or poetic exaggeration, but none dismiss them outright. Your clay catfish remains in hand, glaze cool against your palm. You flip it over. The grin seems to shift. Maybe that's lamp shadow, maybe vendor sorcery. Hikeshire firemen stride past. Jackets emblazoned with bold kanji, tools clanking, swapping jokes about outrunning the big one. Their bravado is part theater, part therapy. Edo's buildings are tinderboxes, and everyone knows a quake's encore is often a firestorm rock opera. Crossing Kappabashi Street, you hear the watchtower bells strike the hour of the dog, somewhere between 8 and 10 at night by Western reckoning. Bells once rang 96 times the night of the Ansei disaster, though most were swallowed by collapsing eaves. Tonight the notes are crisp, roofs obedient. Inside a candle shop, the proprietor, beard singed from past mishap, brags his wax catfish charms are flying off shelves. He sculpts them from leftover candle stumps. On humid nights they sag, so owners wake screaming, thinking the fish melted in prophetic agony. You consider buying one purely for comedic value, decide your tatama pack is already brimming with omens. Out on the main road again, an ox cart rattles the cobbles. You tense, unsure if vibration comes from hooves or the deep machine of the earth beneath. False alarm. A woman balancing baskets of silk cocoon sighs that her pond carp leapt at sunset. She asks your opinion. Better a fish warning than none, you offer. She nods, perhaps planning to monetize her own carp calamity talismans tomorrow. Moonlight now does half the lighting work. Roof tile edges glow silver. A dog barks twice and falls silent. Under that hush, you feel the city's collective stethoscope pressed to the ground. Eel fishermen leaning over ripples, brewers watching fish spin like compass needles, priests pocketing coin for paper charms, magistrates scribbling fines while secretly charting fishy data. Everyone listens in their own dialect for a subterranean drumroll. At last you reach your inn, a two-story structure hugging a koi pond. The receptionist slides the screen, bowing. You shuffle along a corridor where floorboards complain like old bones. Your room smells of cedar. Sliding open the window, you find koi floating like living lanterns, tranquil and uninterested in prophecy. You set the clay catfish on the sill. Its painted pupils catch moonlight, still smirking. Settling onto futon, you recall a scholarly tidbit. Volcanic islands south of Edo sometimes belch sulfuric gas that disorients fish, sending them into spasms hours before land trembles. Modern researchers argue the gas explanation. Folklorists scoff, insisting the namazu simply knows. That debate still keeps academic conference halls humming. Before surrendering to sleep, you decide on one last detour. Down the row of shuttered textile stores, a glow leaks from an alley barbershop. The owner, scissors tucked behind his ear, offers late-night trims to travelers who fear their top knots might unravel during an unforeseen midnight burial. As he hones his razor, he recounts ancient quakes that flattened entire domains yet somehow left barber poles standing. Truth is, he adds in a whisper, a barber makes more coin shaving heads after a big shake than trimming before one. When my catfish barrel sloshes, I stock extra soap. Leaving with hair mostly unchanged, you meander toward a public bathhouse, drawn by plumes of steam curling like calligraphy. Bathhouse chatter is Edo's social media, saturating rumors in cedar-scented humidity. Scrubbing beside a rice broker who swears his garden earthworms fled upward before last week's tremor, you overhear a midwife claim labor pains spike after quakes. Academic circles still debate whether such animal portents hold water or merely float atop coincidence. One Dutch-trained scholar blames electromagnetic pulses, another calls that conjecture a red herring seasoned with mustard. The disagreement ensures job security for conference translators centuries into the future. Exiting the bathhouse, skin tingling, you join a crowd around a street lecturer standing on an upturned sake crate. He flourishes a bamboo pointer over a charcoal map of the Kanto Plain, declaring Edo rests upon an underground lake. A heckler shouts it's molten rock, not water. The lecturer waves him off, insisting a namazu tale is what sets the hidden sea sloshing. Somewhere between both stories lies a grain of truth covered in a duvet of speculation. Onward you walk. A group of kabuki actors, still in half-removed makeup, grill squid around a lantern, rehearsing tomorrow's skit. A heroic farmer surfing a catfish out to sea to save the city. Everyone laughs, yet anxious glances still cut toward the cobblestones, awaiting applause from the underworld. You approach a printmaker's shop just as the carver signs off for the night. Would shavings lie like curled feathers? He shows you the next edition of a popular Ukiyo-e series. Catfish becomes banker, depicting citizens begging for rebuilding loans while the fish, wearing spectacles, scribbles IOUs with a fin. After any sizable quake, prints featuring bureaucratic namazu sell out faster than heroic samurai scenes. Historians still debate whether such satire accelerated political dissent or merely helped citizens process trauma through humor. The hour of the boar approaches, midnight by Western clocks, and hunger pinches. An all-night eatery serves congee topped with shredded eel. The chef confides he stores barrels of pond mud in his basement. If the mud burps, he hustles the family to higher ground. You leave tempted to snatch a jar of his seismic sludge. A chill rises, bay breeze or intuition, you're unsure. Outside Kashima Shrine's city outpost, talismans depict the god Takamikazuchi pinning the mythical catfish under a colossal stone. Miniature replicas of that rock rest on the altar, chained by red cords. You kneel, offering a prayer, though you admit privately your real allegiance tonight lies with whoever, science or deity, answers first. Walking again, you pass a patrol tapping metal rods on the ground. The eldest guard touches his rod to earth, as though listening with iron ears. No tremor answers. At a nearby well you lean over. Water sits perfectly still. Earlier a vendor urged you to listen to wells. You hold your breath. Nothing. South of here, stars arch over unseen Mount Tsukuba, rumored home to the chained namazu. Legends claim that if the god's vigilance slips, Tsukuba itself will dance. You whisper a half-challenge, half-plea to the night. Approaching the inn once more, you notice dragonflies skimming the koi pond. Folk wisdom says low-flying dragonflies precede storms, or quakes. The innkeeper scatters salt along the veranda, grounding restless spirits. Salt crunches underfoot, resembling distant pebbles skittering across roof tiles. At last tatami welcomes you like a cool parchment. You adjust the mosquito net and lay the clay namazu beside your pillow. Its grin appears conspiratorial, but that's just the candle stub's dying twitch. Outside, the city hushes. Even watch bells lengthen their interval as though syncing with a slower heartbeat. Mind adrift, you catalog tonight's lessons. Barbers hoard soap after fish spin. Bathhouses float rumors on steam. Printmakers gamble livelihoods on subversive scales. Seismologists of tomorrow will still bicker over electromagnetic fields. And Edoites weave fear and laughter into the same rope, hoping it's strong enough to haul them past disaster. In that reflection, the city feels oddly modern. Swap clay catfish for push notifications, and psychology remains identical. A need for warning and a narrative to clutch at 3 in the morning. You wonder whether centuries hence someone will cradle a cracked smartphone the way you cradle your glazed figurine, praying a buzz arrives in time. Sleep draws closer, like a courteous servant making sure not to spill your dreams. The paper screens rattle, only a draft, but your pulse quickens anyway. You slow your breathing, syncing it with the muffled lap of courtyard water. A final, almost academic point flickers before eyelids lower. Scholars will one day coin seismic culture to describe societies that normalize earthquake risk through architecture, ritual, and humor. Edo is the blueprint, catfish are the mascot on its cultural crest, flopping obnoxiously yet undeniably riveting. Your last coherent sensation is the weight of the miniature namazu pressing lightly into your palm, cool and oddly reassuring. You imagine it swimming through your dreams, whiskers brushing memories you haven't made yet, tail flicking against future quakes. Whether warning or illusion, it performs its duty. It lets you believe you might get a head start. River dew still clings to your sleeves as you ease away from the inn's courtyard and drift back toward the Sumida, following that faint sizzle of anticipation in the air. Dawn hovers just below the roof tiles, a lavender glaze slipping between rafters. Even the watchtower bell seems to clear its throat softer than usual, as though reluctant to wake anyone who managed a solid nap. You promised yourself more rest, but curiosity tugs harder than sleep, and a quiet voice inside insists the watermen already know something you don't. By the time you reach the riverbank, the lanterns of night markets have been snuffed, replaced by the pale halos of cooking fires. Eel boats, long, shallow skiffs lacquered black as ink, bob against mooring poles. Each hull sports a flame basket, a conical iron frame intended to hold smoldering charcoal, once evening fishing resumes. Right now those baskets loll empty, looking like open mouths eager for gossip. You step onto a warped plank that serves as makeshift pier. Beneath, the river murmurs in a dialect of gurgles and plunks, translating news from the unseen world underfoot. An elderly angler named Kichigoro greets you with a nod, eyes slitted against the rising sun. His straw hat is frayed to the point of philosophy, every missing strand a lesson about impermanence. Without formalities, he drops a wooden pail at your feet. Inside, a knot of live catfish and eels writhe together in sluggish coils, slick bodies reflecting peach dawn. Watch, he says. One catfish flicks its tail, setting off a chain reaction. The eels jostle, water sloshes, and you'd swear the pail vibrates a fraction longer than physics should allow. Eels feel tides, Kichigoro mutters, but catfish feel anger. You arch an eyebrow, prompting him to elaborate. He claims that whenever the river bottom snarls, his word for the pre-quake groan, a particular hush settles over the eel beds, as though every slimy ribbon has agreed to hold its breath. Minutes later, catfish thrash so violently he has to anchor his pots with extra weights. According to him, last night's swirl suggested the earth contemplated a minor tantrum before deciding on restraint. You wonder whether the brewer's pond experienced the same false start, or if fisherman bravado is just salty theatrics. Mainstream historians would tag Kichigoro as part of Edo's vast aquatic proletariat. Riverfolk who supplied the city with the protein it craved, especially in seasons when the Tokugawa sumptuary laws forbade ostentatious land feasts. Eel, grilled and lacquered with sweet soy glaze, filled stomachs and balanced humors, at least according to physicians who saw nutrients in everything tasty. But these same historians also remind us that watermen kept informal ledgers more meticulous than any government survey. They noted water clarity, fish temperament, and, most intriguingly, the subtle thumps traveling up reed poles when the crust beneath the Kanto plain shifted. Such grassroots data rarely reached magistrates, yet it pulsed through taverns and bathhouses faster than an official courier could saddle a horse. Kichigoro offers you a bamboo rod. Feel the river thinking, he says, casting his own line without bait, the hook glinting like a minuscule sickle. You emulate him. At first the rod transmits nothing but the lazy wobble of current. Then a faint tremor tingles along the shaft. So faint it could be imagination. The fisherman smiles, as though your confused squint confirms his life's thesis. He explains that some colleagues balance porcelain teacups on deck gunnels while sorting nets. If a cup quivers unprovoked, they declare a short fishing break and head for higher ground, or at least an extra drink. Academic circles still debate whether this qualifies as folk seismology or mere occupational superstition, but they agree the practice predates the first European-built seismoscope by centuries. A skiff slides out of the dawn haze, crewed by two apprentices not much older than kite-flying age. They row with synchronized grunts, depositing wicker eel pots upriver. Between strokes one lad whistles an Edo Street tune about a namazu so mighty it flips the moon. His partner counters with a verse in which imperial courtiers ride that same fish like a barge, tossing tax scrolls into the sea. Their cheerful nonsense loops back on itself until all you hear is laughter stitched into or splashes. You realize songs are the river folk's way of exorcising dread, turning tectonic menace into melodic slapstick. Your stomach mutters. Apparently it wants breakfast before aftershocks. Kichigoro unpacks rice balls wrapped in bamboo leaves and offers you one. Vinegared rice, tart pickled plum center, they taste of simplicity and river mist. Halfway through the second bite, a cormorant erupts from the water nearby, wings thrumming droplets into sparkles. The bird circles, then dives again, vanishing so cleanly the surface scarcely ripples. Some fishermen employ cormorants tethered to leashes, using rings around their necks to make them relinquish swallowed eels. Yet Kichigoro prefers reading birds as barometers. If cormorants hug shoreline perches instead of venturing midstream, he predicts heavy rain. If they vanish inland before dawn, he anticipates deep tremors. You glance around. Several perches stand empty. Ominous? Or maybe the birds are simply late sleepers. He ties a slip knot around the pail handle and lowers it into the river, letting fresh water swirl through. The catfish inside shudder, then settle. You crouch, peering at their whiskered faces. One opens its mouth and closes it slowly, as if mouthing a secret word. The eel beside it coils like cursive script. A random memory surfaces. During the Meiji era, students composed tongue twisters featuring namazu to test diction. Some phrases were so contorted they allegedly summoned hiccups powerful enough to forecast minor quakes. That fringe linguistic theory never gained traction, yet you file it away as another delightfully useless fact. Kichigoro gestures for silence, index finger across cracked lips. He removes a thin reed flute from his sash and plays a three-note motif, high, higher, fall, barely audible above the water's hush. Within moments, eel heads poke from submerged baskets, drawn by vibration or perhaps by routine feeding expectation. Sound travels faster through water than fear, he remarks. You picture the pre-quake ocean layers vibrating like enormous drums, broadcasting panicked chords only fish can hear. Modern marine biologists debate the exact frequency range, using tanks bristling with sensors, yet no lab replicates the messy grandeur of a living river. You return the bamboo rod. Your wrists already ache from its subtle hum. As Kichigoro coils line, a younger fisherman wades up holding a rag-wrapped bundle. He unwraps a small earthen jar, its lid punctured with holes. Inside, river shrimp as long as your fingernail, translucent bodies pulsing blue-white. River lightning, he jokes. Touch one and it flicks an electrostatic jolt. barely enough to startle, never harm. Folklore claims that when shrimp gather in unusual density, an earthquake approaches, charging the water column with ions. Scholars still debate shrimp conductivity, but the jar crackles imperceptibly against your palm, and sensation or placebo races through your fingertips. To lighten the mood, you spin a tall tale about a Dutch merchant who once tried to patent catfish telegraphs. Claiming he could relay seismic warnings from Nagasaki to Edo solely by chaining barrels of fish. The youngsters guffaw, yet one asks if the merchant succeeded. You shrug. History rarely records the flops as neatly as the triumphs. What we know is that the first verified telegraph wires won't string across Japan until late Bakumatsu. By then, catfish will lose their monopoly on early warning, though they'll retain cultural stardom. A barge drifts by carrying bundles of thatching reed bound for city roofs. The bargeman salutes, then calls out, "Any tail slaps?" Kichigoro shakes his head. The bargeman spits into the river, muttering that quiet fish make loud earthquakes and vice versa. You grin at the fatalistic algebra. Then, as if scripted, a gentle tremor ripples through the planks. Nothing violent, more like an unsteady breath underfoot. Teacups on a nearby crate clink. Within seconds, the sensation fades. Birds burst from willow branches but quickly resettle. You and the fisherman trade glances. Nobody panics, yet talk ceases, replaced by that involuntary listening posture every Edo-ite adopts when reality blurs for a heartbeat. Preliminary wave, Kichigoro murmurs. Could be nothing, could be a greeting. He kneels over the pail. The catfish gyrate once, twice, then float motionless. Eels resume lazy spirals. You exhale the lungful you didn't realize you'd held. According to official chronologies, Edo experiences hundreds of microtremors yearly. Most slip beneath thresholds of architecture and memory. But for riverfolk whose cabins ride tides at slack moorings, each microtremor is felt, catalogued, compared. Their bodies become seismographs etched by decades of sway. A cart squeaks down the embankment trail carrying a modest shrine palanquin. Two priests in faded robes accompany it, evidently relocating the deity after last week's minor flooding. One pauses to bless the fisherman, drawing salt from a pouch and scattering granules across the water. Curiously, eels swarm toward the sparkle before darting away. The priest interprets this as auspicious, though no metric defines eel enthusiasm in omens. You debate whether to ask for a personal blessing. Last section's clay namazu may suffice. Breakfast concludes with kettle-boiled barley tea, smoky and comforting. Over steaming cups you query Kichigoro about record-keeping. Does he jot data? He taps a calloused finger to his forehead. Everything stored here. Paper molds. Memory survives. You resist challenging that claim. Still, oral archives travel fragile routes. One lost tooth, one stroke, and a generation's seismic diary disappears. Historians lament this gap. Debates rage in journals about how many early warnings went undocumented, lost like sandbars reshaped by currents. Nearby, two merchant clerks in short coats crouch beside a reed bed, fussing with a lacquered box. One clerk flips a toggle. A small metal needle wobbles, tethered to a paper drum. They unveil it proudly, an import from Shanghai, allegedly able to measure ground tilt. Kichigoro squints. Takes too long. By the time the needle dances, my catfish have written poetry about it. The clerks bristle. You intervene by asking whether they cross-check fish behavior with instrument readings. The younger clerk admits they've logged only 7 data points. Not enough for conclusions. A minor academic scuffle brews, precisely the type symposium organizers will still replicate 2 centuries hence. Fishtails versus instrument trails. A quirky side note. In late Edo tavern games, gamblers rolled dice featuring catfish icons. If 3 namazu appeared, players could ignore all losses under the superstition that a real tremor would soon render debts meaningless. Authorities outlawed the set, fearing economic chaos, yet smuggled dice surface in archaeological digs. You share this tidbit. The apprentices beg you to bring such dice next visit. You pretend to check your sleeves as though one might tumble out, earning their groans. Mid-morning, a breeze sweeps upriver, smelling of distant seaweed and tar. The bustle of city merchants intensifies along quays. Stevedores unload rice bales, coopers test barrel hoops, and a chorus of hawkers sells everything from dried persimmons to love charms. Kichigoro prepares to head upstream, planning to set traps where eel migration peaks at twilight. He invites you aboard. The skiff rocks as you step in. You seat yourself on an overturned crate, palms pressed to planks, eager to feel how hull and water splice signals from the planet's pulse. He pulls away from shore. Ripples peel behind like spooled silk. Warehouses recede, replaced by willow groves. Each branch trails green ribbons into glassy water, and reflection doubles the density of leaves, like the world rehearsing for a mirrored performance. Somewhere deeper, the catfish barrel still swings beneath rope loops. Kichigoro checks it periodically, tightening knots whenever he senses slack or tension at odds with surface chop. You realize he steers not just by sight or current but by feedback from his living cargo. The skiff drifts past a floating tea house moored mid-river, essentially a wooden raft wearing a pavilion hat. Customers recline on tatami, sipping matcha while lotus blossoms nod around them. Servers ladle tea using long bamboo dippers. A signboard advertises, "Earthquake Exemption Hour. Free refill if the floor wobbles." Whether gimmick or genuine, you can't say, but staff keep sets of miniature sandals near each mat in case patrons must evacuate onto boats. Tea spirit meets risk management. 21st century cafes could take notes. After pushing beyond the city outskirts, the river narrows, funneling between levees. Banks reveal tan mudflats where children hunt insects. Here Kichigoro stops and opens a wooden locker. Inside, dozens of glass jars filled with river water from different tides. Each jar is dated and annotated with brush strokes so concise they resemble insect legs. Salinity, he explains. Silt. Smell. When those change without moon or rain, crust is arguing below. He invites you to sniff. One jar taken 3 days ago bears a faint sulfur tang. You recall academic papers suggesting microruptures vent gas through riverbeds. Scholars still wrangle over sample contamination, but your nose votes for volcanic burp. He logs today's jar with deliberate strokes, then seals it. The ledger may be in his head, but jars archive his intuition, liquid memory. You mention this. He laughs that jars outlive fishermen, so maybe historians will crack them like old pickles, tasting yesterday's dread. The sun climbs higher, sliding gold foil across the water. Cicadas rehearse their monotone opera from bank reeds. Under such heat, thoughts melt, and conversation slows to gestures. You dangle fingers over the side, letting coolness nibble knuckles. Suddenly your hand senses a faint rocking. Again that uncanny transition where river waves adopt an undertone of something subterranean. The skiff tilts scarcely a thumb's width. Small but unnatural given calm weather. Kichigoro stiffens, gaze flitting to the catfish pail. Inside, fish swirl like a stirred galaxy, tails brushing in centrifugal choreography. Eels twist restless ribbons. He thrusts the pole deep and anchors. Hold. Moments drag. A staccato jolt rattles the hull, sharper than earlier, yet still minor. Dragonflies lift, hover, resettle. In Edo proper this will barely nudge a paper screen, but out here on open water the sensation magnifies. You clench the gunwale, heartbeat skittering. Then quiet returns, almost sheepish in its retreat. Kichigoro hisses between teeth. That felt cross-current, maybe Sagami Trough. You marvel at his mental map of fault lines. Modern geology validates his hunch. The Sagami Trough indeed spawns mid-level quakes that wag Tokyo like an impatient finger. Universities will later deploy ocean-bottom seismographs. Still, a river fisherman just triangulated using pole vibration and fish choreography. Textbook writers ought to give these unsung researchers footnotes and medals. He relaxes. Enough excitement. We tie up, eat, wait. You help secure the skiff to a willow trunk. Lunch emerges. Grilled river goby skewers dusted with sansho pepper. The pepper's citrus bite jolts taste buds awake, grounding nerves. He passes a gourd of diluted sake. You sip sparingly, savoring rice sweetness. The apprentices arrive in a second skiff, boasting that their eel pots already brim. They haven't felt any tremor. Maybe the fault spared their stretch. Kichigoro chuckles. You row noisy, earth can't compete. On shore, a farmer leads oxen along irrigation dikes. He stops to chat, reporting that his pond carp leapt simultaneously moments ago. You connect this to your own jolt. Farmer says carp seldom sink leaps unless startled by shadow or shockwave. He's debating whether to reinforce his granary. You privately note how communal anecdote shapes rural engineering. Afternoon drifts forward like a lazy sail. Cicadas crescendo, then cut to silence, leaving momentary ear-ringing void. Kichigoro signals for nets to be set. Apprentices wade thigh-deep, weaving stakes into the riverbed. Nets billow like ghost curtains. You stay aboard, assigned lookout duty. 5 cormorants perch on a log midstream, wings spread to dry. Their silhouettes form a living sextant, measuring either wind or worry. To pass time, you recount the scholarly anecdote of the 1703 Jinroku quake. Records mention catfish leaping into cooking fires at riverside hut seconds before the main shock. Some families, startled by sizzling fish, ran outside and survived when their cabins collapsed. Historians still debate whether the timing was coincidence or natural alarm. Contemporary retellings often add embellishments. Fish preaching sermons, fish flogging bells with tails. Kichigoro listens, nodding sagely. If it saved lives, let them exaggerate. The sky slips from gold to copper. Shadows stretch out like sleepy cats. Apprentices haul nets. Eels writhe silver-black amid amber water, a fluid treasure spilling into tubs. They cheer. Tonight's catch will fetch decent coin. Kichigoro lifts one robust eel for inspection, murmuring apologies before sliding it into a crate. Respect for quarry runs deep. Another unwritten rule riverfolk uphold even while wrangling early warning mascots. You help coil ropes, and with chores done, the skiffs drift back cityward, bow waves glimmering copper. Along levees torches ignite. Their reflections tremble on gentle ripples, flashing Morse code to invisible night fishermen downstream. Mid-river you cross paths with a patrol boat bearing city guards. One guard shouts interrogation. Any sign of the beast? Meaning the next big quake. Kichigoro merely taps his pail. The guard laughs, tipping hat, then rows on. Satisfied the frontline watch remains vigilant and, more importantly, humorous. Edo's skyline emerges, a sawtooth of pagoda roofs and storehouse gables. Smoke from evening cookfires paints soft stripes across the sunset. Your muscles ache pleasantly. Hands smell of river. As skiffs glide under wooden bridges, foot traffic above hums. Sandals slapping planks, traders bargaining, a baby squealing at silk kite vendors. Normalcy sits lightly upon everyone's shoulders, though each heart still echoes midday jolts. That duality, routine atop uncertainty, defines Edo almost as much as sakura petals or kabuki flamboyance. Back on dock, Kichigoro hauls his catch to the buyer's stall. Scales clatter into bamboo baskets. The buyer, a plump woman with ink-smudged ledgers, peeks at the pail. Catfish restless again? He shrugs non-committally. Information retains value only if rationed. She pays extra just in case. Restaurants love a timely rumor to spice menus. Eel with side of seismic intrigue. Sold out before curfew. You part ways. He presses the reed flute into your palm. Blow 3 notes if ground starts singing. I'll find you. Accepting feels like joining a guild of listeners. He disappears into alleys, pail swinging, fish likely gossiping among themselves. You pocket the flute. Its bamboo warmth lingers. Night hoists itself over the city like a velvet canopy speckled with star shavings. Lamps ignite in cascading order. Waterfront first, then market arcades. Finally residential lanterns glowing through shoji panels. A cool breeze ghosts down the canal corridors, carrying whispers of soy, charcoal, and an undercurrent metallic as suspended heartbeat. You tread narrow lanes toward your lodgings, yet each watery reflection catches your eye. Does it ripple prematurely? You can't unlearn the tactile alphabet of tremors. The river stamped it into your nerves. Passing under a sake shop awning, you witness two scholars in heated debate, volleying citations about piezoelectric stresses in quartz sands and how these might generate electromagnetic pulses, allegedly sensed by fish bladders. One argues the pulses propagate upstream faster than seismic P waves. The other counters that fish lack nerve receptors for such frequencies. Their quarrel escalates until an exasperated brewer dumps a bucket, splashing both. Laughter erupts from onlookers. You silently award points for entertainment but withhold judgment. Academic peer review requires more water and less sake. Closer to the inn, a storyteller rehearses outside a tofu stall, testing material for tomorrow's crowd. A comedic spin where an eel unionizes, demanding shorter work hours because earthquakes disrupt its circadian rhythm. Punchlines land with moderate success. Writers still workshopping. A side alley leads you past a communal well. You pause. Surface mirror still. Remember listening wells? You kneel ear inches from the curb. Nothing but faint drip echoes. Perhaps tonight the namazu sleeps, belly satisfied from midday pirouettes. Still, you add 1 drop of the brewer's leftover salt. Superstitious insurance. The inn's paper shutters whisper apart at first light, and you glide into the street with a quiet confidence borrowed from yesterday's river lessons. Fresh tatami scent still clings to your sleeves, but the city's pulse has already quick-stepped from lullaby to lively drumbeat. You step down onto sun-warmed cobbles, and the instant your wouldn't get a tapped stone, the entire boulevard seems to answer. Click-clack, click-clack. A chorus of clogs that ripples from storefront to shrine gate like a domino wave of bamboo hammers. At first the rhythm feels purely musical. Vendors arranging baskets keep time with brisk heel-to-toe hops. Maidservants trot errands in syncopated bursts. And that kid in the tattered happy you saw filching persimmons yesterday now beats double time as he dodges the grocer's broom. But the longer you listen, the more those taps resemble scattered hoofbeats from something immense just underfoot. Yesterday's tremors taught your ears to eavesdrop on hidden bass lines. Today you can't unhear them. Every sharp clack becomes a Morse dash, every softer scuff a dot, composing a telegram from the earth's restless subtext. You cut east toward Nyanbashi again, Edo's central spine, because that is where rumor turns quickest from ember to bonfire. Your geta-sols, carved from Polonia so light they almost float, send a crisp report each time they touch granite paving. Around you, dozens of other pairs answer. One woman's clogs have iron horseshoe plates, producing a metallic clink that slices through breakfast chatter. A samurai's narrower platform ticks higher, like castanets. Somewhere a carpenter's apprentice jogs on tooth-style geta that leave dotted tracks in dust. Layer these textures together and the street becomes a percussion ensemble, rehearsing without conductor. A shopkeeper bows you inside a tiny emporium crammed floor to rafters with footwear. Rows of geta perch on pegs like silent spectators. Two-tooth, snow country tallboys, lacquered festival monsters painted vermilion. The owner, mustache waxed into startled seagull wings, claims yesterday's tremor-boosted sales of his newest model, Steady Steps. He gestures dramatically toward a pair whose teeth are not parallel but splayed outward like tripod legs. Wider base, less tumble when ground jiggles, he proclaims. You test them. They feel absurdly stable, though you suspect the real innovation is psychological comfort rather than physics. Still, that counts. When catastrophe markets itself, entrepreneurs answer fast. Mainstream historians point out that Edo shoemakers competed fiercely, their guild charters listing dozens of micro-designs optimized for rain, snow, temple floors, and yes, the occasional quake. Archaeologists unearth geta fragments near collapsed Tenpo-era houses, measuring where patterns to guess escape speed. From such mundane relics scholars reconstruct disaster choreography. An entire neighborhood thundering toward levees at once, each footfall burning into clay like a timestamp. Whether wider teeth truly prevented faceplants remains uncertain, but historians agree that footwear shaped survival odds more than sword skill on tremor days. You leave your own modest clogs outside, slip into the steady steps, and wobble only slightly. Success. The proprietor wraps your old pair in rice straw, tossing in a free sachet of quake-calming cedar chips. He confides that cedar fragrance masks the odor of fierce sweat and therefore, tricks the namazu into dozing longer. The logic is spectacularly suspect, yet the sachet smells wonderful, so into the sleeve it goes. Back on the avenue, your upgraded platforms issue a deeper thunk than before. You notice how every bystander reflexively gauges that sound. The rice porter glances, the courtesan lifts an eyebrow, the stray dog tilts its head. Edo's citizens calibrate strangers by shoe acoustics. Heavy authority, light mischief, stealthy intent. Long before glimpsing faces. In this city, personality radiates from the pavement upward. Turning a corner, you stumble upon a curious scene. An old man kneels beside an elm stump, pressing his ear to wood. Around him, half a dozen children imitate, giggling whenever a wagon rattles past because vibrations tickle their jaws. The elder motions you closer. Roots talk, he croaks. They carry the road story. You crouch, pressing ear to stump. Through fibrous rings you pick up distant clog beats, wagon lumber creaks, and, if imagination stretches, a faint subterranean hum. Is that the fault line? Or just blood rushing your eardrum? The children swear they hear a giant fish purring. Quirky fact break. During the Ansei era, certain fortune-tellers offered stump readings, claiming tree roots predicted both tremors and romantic prospects. Clients paid a sand to hug tree trunks. Then scribes interpreted the resonance. Scholars label the practice arboromancy and file it under fringe divination. Yet business boomed until a skeptic magistrate banned it as noise pollution. Copies of such bans survive, stamped with the shogunate's seal, proving even nonsense leaves paperwork footprints. You thank the stump whisperer and continue, feet adapting to new gait. Noon sun slips through alley lattice, polka-dotting dust motes. A row of food stalls unfurl Norin curtains. One sells sakuramachi, another sizzling Odin skewers, a third advertises quake-resistant miso soup, thickened with extra barley to stick to ribs should dinnerware tumble later. Marketing genius tastes like fermented soybean. Outside a bathhouse, buckets of water line the eaves. Firefighters' first defense when shaking knocks lanterns ask you. Volunteer hikes your nap inside. Helmets stacked like tortoise shells. There get a sit paired neatly. One brave soul has nailed iron cleats onto sawls for traction on collapsing tiles. You snap mental notes. Get a customization equals microinsurance. The street narrows into a residential lane. Here, the clatter theme shifts. Lighter children's get a skipping chalk squares, elderly shuffling Zori barely brushing ground, a cat tiptoeing between shadows like an afterthought. Your own clogs now echo against close wooden facades, the reverb exaggerated. You slow, partly to appreciate acoustics, partly because a signboard ahead intrigues you. It reads, Silence Test. Walk length of corridor without clack. Earn sweet bun. Beneath, an arrow points into a covered arcade, paved with smooth cypress planks. A confectioner stands by, arms folded, awaiting challengers. Local kids fail hilariously, each step ringing like temple bells. The reward buns pile scarcely dented. You, emboldened by steady step tech, accept. Breath held, knees bent, you glide forward, placing heel then toe with deliberation. First plank murmurs, second squeaks faintly, third behaves. 20 silent paces later, you reach the ribbon. Applause erupts. Confectioner bows, presenting a red bean bun dusted with kanako. You bite sweet, nutty, pride-flavored. Why the game? The confectioner explains he wants to train neighbors to move quietly, so they can hear creaking beams during quakes. If your footsteps drown out danger, walls could collapse before you notice. Historians still debate whether such quiet walking drills genuinely saved lives, or if they merely generated pastry sales, but diaries from the 1840s mention families practicing hush walks after supper, so the idea certainly took hold. Snack devoured, you stroll on, listening anew. Each roof tile overhead seems poised for audition. A crow squawks from ridgepole, flaps twice, settles. Even birds gauge structural stability. You cross a canal on plank bridge too narrow for carts. Below, water glints green-black. Boatmen pull cargo between storehouses. Their clogs are rope-soled waraji, less noise, better grip. They grin when you pass, hollering a proverb. Only fools race in iron shoes when earth is steel beneath. You feign offense. They laugh harder. On the far side, a clock drum booms noon from Yoshima Saido Academy Dome, sending ripples through clatter chorus. Scholars exit lecture halls in disciplined rows. Their leather-capped get a uniformly padded with felt strips. One tutor explains that constant drumbeats calibrate public time signatures, and felt saws prevent echo contamination, ensuring each boom stands crisp. You realize city soundscapes operate like layered manuscripts. Official rhythms on top, communal footnotes below. A plaza opens around Kanda Shrine. Merchants hawk charms promising feather-light footsteps. A shrine maiden sells cord bracelets woven with microbells. Ironically, their faint chime is said to ward off big tremors by satisfying the namazu's craving for noise. Customers vary: pilgrims, artisans, a Jaruri chanter with sore throat. You buy one bracelet purely for field research and tie it around ankle. Each step now emits a silvery ping, subtle but distinct. Passers-by notice, and you suddenly embody both lab rat and street performer. Near the shrine steps, two carpenters carve fresh wooden beams. Chips scatter, smelling of resin and promise. One explains they're fashioning quake joints, swallowtail cuts that allow beams to flex without snapping. He demonstrates by jamming two offcuts, then wrenching. The joint bends, refuses to break. Samurai builders copied the design from temple carpentry perfected centuries earlier. Mainstream historians hail this as proto-engineering genius that let Edo roofs sway like reed stalks rather than crumble. Yet there's debate whether common homes actually employed such pricey joinery or just elite mansions could afford it. The carpenter shrugs, he builds what clients pay for. You wander deeper into residential warren, rejoicing how clogs echo differently on packed dirt versus stone. In an alley so tight you must angle shoulders, you meet a retired geisha training juniors in earthquake poise. Each girl balances a porcelain tea saucer on head while practicing fan dance. The lesson: graceful instability breeds reflexive stability. One saucer wobbles, slips, crashes, junior laughs, mentor sighs. You recall anecdotes that after the 1855 quake, geisha from Yoshiwara district famously guided panicked patrons to evacuation points, never dropping lanterns. Folklorists argue whether that heroism is mythologized marketing, but the saucer exercise implies training rooted in reality. A rumble of thunder rolls across distant sky. Summer cloudburst preparing. Citizens glance up, palms outstretched, gauging droplets. Rain plus quake multiplies hazard. Slippery bridges, clogged drains, saturated clay foundations that liquefy. Get a teeth grip mud poorly unless shod with iron spikes. You note how a street-side smithy advertises rain cleats you can nail to soles in under a minute. They're ugly but worry sells. You find shelter under paper lantern awning of a tofu stand. Steam vents from simmering pans. The vendor offers yudofu sprinkled with ginger. As you sip broth, she recounts family legend. Her great-uncle's clogs squeaked unusually loud hours before the Great Hoi Quake of 1707. He investigated, discovering a cracked get-a-tooth resonating with foreshock frequency. Thus the family evacuated early. Historians still debate whether this is retrospective myth or plausible microdamage warning, but the tale keeps customers coming. Rain arrives, drumming rooftops, muting clatter into mushy thuds. Steady steps prove adept. Their wider teeth don't sink deeply. Puddles pool between cart ruts, reflecting storm-tossed lanterns like melted gold. You venture toward Karami District, warehouse zone where thick earthen walls store rice tributes. There, giant stepping stones allow officials to traverse slurry without soiling silk. You hop elegantly, ankle bells chiming, until a guard halts you. Rice bales toppled in earlier tremor. Visitors must detour. Through open gates you glimpse workers propping beams with cedar struts, chanting Ichienai-san with every lift. Sinking muscle to cadence stabilizes tempo, crucial when ground may shift mid-heave. Past warehouses, the street broadens again. Rain tapers, leaving petrichor. A traveling peddler demonstrates his latest novelty. Cork-lined geta that float if wearer falls into floodwater. Ideal, he claims, for tsunami escape. Kids beg parents. You ask weight capacity. He answers by tossing one clog into barrel, where it bobs obediently. Whether they'd support a sprinting adult is questionable, but marketing spectacle attracts a crowd. Quirky side note. Edo police once outlawed stilts during typhoon season after pranksters tried crossing flooded avenues, causing chaos. Stilts, floating get a continuum of daring footwear tech. Mid-afternoon now and you crave tea. A cozy Machiya tea house welcomes. Tatami mats still damp from patrons shaking umbrellas. Removing clogs at threshold, you note how foot odor might reveal anxiety, so you deploy cedar sachet. Inside, a scholar pores over Chinese classics, occasionally tapping a sandal against floor joist, listening for vibrations. You join, ordering hojicha. Scholar introduces himself as Professor Ukiyo-e, studying acoustic signatures of pre-seismic timber. He explains that wood beams emit subaudible clicks under compressive stress. Sensitive ears, or trained geta taps, can detect them. He demonstrates by rapping knuckles on pillar. Faint echo. You lean close, maybe hear minuscule squeal, maybe imagination. Historians still argue if Edo residents truly practiced this acoustic vigilance or if it's retrospective glamour, but Ukiyo-e's thesis seeks measurable proof. He builds resonating boxes housing crickets. When beams creak, insects hush, amplifying silence. He invites you tomorrow for demo. You promise. Leaving tea house, you find the sky clear, rinsed cobalt. Sun glints off puddles like tossed coins. Your ankle bell bracelet dried into mellow ting, less shrill. A soothing heartbeat to pace by. Streets bustle again. Wooden feet newly energized after rain respite. You aim for Asakusa district, drawn by low hum of festival drums. An impromptu market has sprung around Sensoji's gates. Stalls hawk ninjoyaki cakes molded as catfish, each stamped, shake safe. Children gobble them giggling, sometimes making fish flop gestures, predicting parental screams. Fire eaters perform. Their torches send gusts of heat that warp air, appearing to ripple ground. Optical illusions reminding watchers how illusions can precede or follow real sway. The pagoda looms crimson above. Inside main hall, incense thickens. Monks chant sutras in resonance with taiko booms, vibration therapy for anxious souls. You shuffle across planked floor, socks gripping polished boards. Here, footwear removal dampens thunder of crowds. Silence blankets murmurs, broken only by gong strokes that vibrate sternum. Ritual meets architecture. Thick columns spaced to resonate specific frequencies, absorbing quake energy. Engineers centuries later will marvel at how temples survived with minor damage compared to common homes. Some attribute strength to wooden flexibility, others to divine blueprint. Academics keep debating. You step back outside into golden late-day sun. Shadows lengthen. Clogs resume their reign. A street performer tests balance atop a 10-foot bamboo pole, geta strapped like stilts. Every clack amplified by height. He claims he'll sense quakes earlier because wobble magnifies. Audience laughs, yet a few slip coins into his cup. Risk plus novelty equals profit, as always. Hungry again, you queue at a soba cart. Chef chops noodles, dropping them into boiling broth. He wears tiny copper bells on geta teeth. Safety feature, he says. If noodles quake out of pot, bells ring, alerting him before scalding splash. You can't decide if this is clever or marketing flair. Either way, extra bell jingle syncs nicely with street shuffle. Night's blue ink begins seeping edges of rooftops. Shop front candles flicker on. Your steady steps have carried you leagues across timber and tile, yet feet feel fresh. Evidence maybe the hype is half true. You join a throng converging toward Ryogoku Bridge for evening cool. There, wooden planks span broad river, each footfall resonating into water hollow. Underfoot, planks bounce gently. You test springs, flex built to yield under crowds rather than snap. Bridge masters learned long ago that rigid spans crack when quake waves roll, but springy ones dance and live. Mainstream historians celebrate Edo carpentry for such resilience, though they still dispute which bridge first adopted iron bindings that acted like tendons. Midspan, you pause. City lights sparkle like scattered fireflies across black silk. Boats pass below, lanterns trailing reflections. Somewhere upstream, Kichigoro's eel pots probably brim again, his catfish murmuring nightly bulletins. You rest forearms on railing, listening not to river but to collective clatter behind, hundreds of get-a-clicks forming white noise. Straining, you attempt to parse rhythm for anomalies. Sudden hush? Emergent sync? Nothing yet. Just ordinary civilization chatter. A troop of firefighters jogs over bridge, drilling. Their geta feature rawhide saws for grip. They chant cadence and occasionally stomp hard, checking boards for hidden rot. You fall in step for a block. Each stomp vibrates up shin bones, a free bone massage. Off-bridge, night market lanterns dangle from ropes. The ground vendors declaim fresh seaweed sheets, quake-aged. Wrinkled pattern resembles seismic contour maps. Artists selling brush paintings display new print. A namazu-e wearing geta, tiptoeing away from angry god, captioned, "Even fish respect proper footwear." You purchase one. Art plus pun equals must-have. Lanterns sway as breeze picks up. You heed earlier stump whisperer, pressing ear briefly to storefront pillar. Wind vibrations mask everything, but exercise reminds you to keep senses wide. The ankle bell chimes softer, blending with stall music, shamisen, bamboo flute, distant taiko. Urban orchestra now fully tuned. A sudden hush washes market. Performers freeze. A drumbeat skips. For heartbeat-long moment you expect jolt. Instead, a merchant's heavy crate slams accidental to ground. Everyone exhales. Laughter erupts. Tension diffuses like steam. Fear and relief share thin membrane in Edo's nighttime. You drift toward soles tingling with miles of microfeedback. At entrance you bow, slip off steady steps, thank them silently. Hostess greets you, remarking on new design. She's considering bulk order for guests. Upstairs, sliding door whispers shut. In lamplight you line up footwear. Old pair wrapped in straw beside new. Clay namazu oversees arrangement. Bamboo flute rests across. Ankle bracelet coils like silver ? Tatami accepts weary weight. Joints pop. Satisfied. Candle crackles. You unroll diary. Scribble. Clogs speak volumes. Investigate acoustics of fear. Sketch wide teeth profile. Note cedar sachet efficiency. Annotate joint carpentry demonstration. You end entry. Historians will wrangle. Did geta save lives or merely echo panic? Pending evidence, my feet vote yes. Mosquito net descends. Outside, geta diminuendo fades with curfew bell. Cities with bones sigh. Somewhere, deeper bones hold their secrets. You close eyes but ears linger, half expecting phantom clack trailing across memory corridors. Instead, lullaby emerges. Percussion of rain-damp bamboo dripping. River breathing under bridge. Distant watch bell chiming hour of the dog. Rhythm steady, ground still. You loosen fists, trusting steady steps stand ready by door if night decides to dance. Sleep dissolves the way ink bleeds when a careless brush tip lingers too long, and you drift up through milky pre-dawn light to find the inn already humming. Somewhere down the corridor a maid rolls up futons. Boards mutter beneath her knees. From the courtyard pond a single koi flops, a soft punctuation mark reminding you that yesterday's lessons on footfall acoustics were only one stanza in Edo's seismic poem. Today, color and paper are calling. You dress quickly, tucking the bamboo flute into your sash next to the cedar sachet. Clay namazu stays on the sill, watching sunrise tangerines smear the tiled horizon. As you step outside, the air tastes of fresh shoyu and damp straw. Merchants are unbundling wares, and printers in Karami are already swinging studio doors wide to catch first light. Good printing requires honest sunshine, or so the block carvers claim. You fall into the current of early shoppers, guided less by maps than by whiffs of sumi ink riding the morning breeze. Soon the neat grid of streets starts to ripple into alleys more tangled than a ball of thread after a cat parade. Overhead, signboards creak, each painted with bold characters: Hoisur, painter; Dalsur, block cutter; Durasur, printer. If Edo is a living scroll, this district, Horicho, is its pigment-soaked heart. You duck beneath fluttering indigo norin that marks the studio of one Hoitsu, a mid-tier painter rumored to be experimenting with quake scenes, for a new set of illustrated scrolls. Inside, the scent hits first. Pine soot ink mingled with the resinous perfume of freshly planed cherry blocks. The fragrance is oddly soothing, like breathing in an ancient hymn. Hoitsu himself appears in a swirl of robe and sawdust, hair pinched back by a brush tucked carelessly behind one ear. He waves you over a low workbench cluttered with palettes, raw pigments, and a half-finished makemono. Those horizontal picture scrolls that unroll like cinematic time machines. Without preamble, he taps the scroll. "Watch closely," he says, fingers stained magenta from Benabana safflower dye. Real terror hides in negative space. You kneel, resting elbows on knee, and allow eyes to travel left to right along the paper ribbon. At first, the cityscape looks familiar. Tile roofs, curved bridges, the spindle silhouette of Gojo's pagoda. But about midway, roofs bend in improbable arcs, as though someone pressed the city between palms. The sky above vibrates with swirling wisps of silver mica dust, shimmering like fractured moonlight. And at bottom, threading through canal water, a colossal namazu writhes. Its whiskers fork into side streets. Its dorsal fin replaces an entire ward's roofline. The fish seems to shrug the city like a blanket, buildings tumbling into waves of paper. Hoitsu flicks a splash of clean water onto a blank corner, letting it bead. Wet paper, he notes, is memory before words. Then, with single confident stroke, he drags a brush through the bead, splitting it. The resulting vein resembles a fresh fault crack. He smirks. You can almost hear the timbers splinter, yes? And because memory of yesterday's footstep symphony is still warm, you do hear it. An imaginative groan louder than mortar. Mainstream history check. Edo's print culture at this time is booming, literacy rates soaring beyond most of Europe. Ukiyo-e prints travel faster than official edicts. A scandalous courtesan portrait can blanket teahouse walls within days. After the catastrophic 1855 Ansei quake, actual namazu-e, Catfish pictures, will flood the city as both satire and spiritual talisman. Scholars later count over 400 variants in just 2 months. Today's scroll is a decade early, but artists like Hoitsu pioneer the visual vocabulary that will let citizens laugh in the face of rubble. You ask what pigments he uses for catastrophe. He lifts a tiny porcelain dish. "Go fun," he answers. Ground oyster shell, white as late winter dawn. But in margins he experiments with brutal streaks of Bengala red iron oxide, imported indigo, and, in a bizarre twist, powdered shattered roof tiles from a temple cracked in last spring's tremor. Fewer impurities, he claims, and the color refuses to fade. Obscure fact unlocked. There's a minor guild of color merchants who scour ruins specifically for high-temperature baked ceramics to mill into pigments labeled yakutsuchi, or quake-fired earth. They argue the mineral alignment after a seismic baking gives superior gloss. Whether true or marketing, the pigment fetches extravagantly high prices among artists chasing authenticity. Across the room, woodblock carver Okuma hunches over a chunk of mountain cherry wood, coaxing line art into negative relief with a razor-short kanna chisel. Wood curls gather at her feet like spicy ramen flakes. She's petite but forearms ripple sinew. Each stroke flicks a curlicue that falls against her sleeve. You approach gingerly because carvers guard their evolving blocks the way ninja guard secret maps. Okuma glances up, eyes narrowing through hair wisps. "Don't breathe too loud," she teases. A sneeze can flatten Edo before the fish ever can. Her current block shows a rooftop row. They lean precariously left, then right, like dancers uncertain of choreography. You notice she's cut minuscule fractures along eaves, each no wider than a whisker. She slides a finger along the wood. When printer rubs ink, these grooves will catch extra pigment. The roofs will look bruised. She chuckles darkly. You marvel that devastation can be carved, printed, sold, and pinned above the very tatami it predicts. While you study, a messenger barges in, unfolding a government broadsheet stamped crimson with the shogunate seal. Everyone halts, ink drips, chisels pause midair. The notice warns artists not to incite needless dread through exaggerated depictions of subterranean beasts. Laughter sizzles around the studio like bacon on iron. Hoitsu tacks the edict onto a pillar, then snorts. Prohibition is the best patron. He smushes extra mica onto the namazu's grin. You're handed a wooden spoon of thick, gelatinous nori adhesive to stir pigment. The texture is like half-set pudding. It sucks the spoon reluctantly. Printer Shunpei gestures you closer to a Kento-registered printing board. He positions thin washi paper, lays the carved key block inked in sumi, and with a rhythmic hiss presses a horsehair baron across curves. The sheet lifts, crisp black outlines sparkle. Over 60 color stages will follow, each requiring new block alignments so precise scholars compare it to brain surgery minus anesthetic. Shunpei offers you the baron for the second pull, indigo for river water. You accept with a thrill of responsibility, pressing careful circles until shoulder muscles warm. When the sheet lifts this time, the namazu's body gleams deep cobalt. Water swirls cerulean, and the city rooftops look as though trapped beneath aquarium glass. A whisper of awe passes your lips. Shunpei nods. Ink remembers every tremor in the wrist. If your fear shows, it stains. As prints hang to dry, apprentice Mayo scurries by carrying a tray of tiny porcelain dishes, each bearing single teardrop of color so intense it seems to vibrate. She sets them on a low table. Orpiment yellow, malachite green, cochineal crimson painstakingly traded from Nagasaki's port, where Spanish merchants dock once a year. Mayo explains that suppliers swear orpiment crystals crackle seconds before earthquakes, as if color itself hates instability. Scholars remain skeptical. Experiments smashing jars of pigment with mallets have yet to record predictive crackles, but the rumor sells. A bell above the doorway clinks. Two samurai patrons enter wearing severe hakama and mildly curious grins. They commission a private set of scrolls depicting the palace unscathed while common neighborhoods buckle. Political propaganda disguised as art. Hoitsu smiles politely, but his eyes betray annoyance. You witness delicate negotiation. Artists crave coin. Samurai desire prestige. In the margins of his ledger, you spot Hoitsu's shorthand noting client. Seismically oblivious. Artists will later embed subversive Easter eggs. Cracked palace tiles, leaning gateposts, almost invisible unless viewer knows to look. Historians still debate whether these hidden jokes were intentional critiques or post-disaster reinterpretations read backward into the work by overenthusiastic grad students. The morning warms, wafting ink fumes upward. A bead of sweat slides down your neck. Okuma shoos you outside toward a breezeway where she keeps her whisper blocks. Discarded with too naughty for final prints, but perfect for recording micro-tremors. Each scrap bears clusters of hatch marks etched sporadically. She demonstrates. She rests the flat side on the floor, blade touching up. When a tremor passes, vibration jerks blade, scoring a line. Over years she amassed planks layered with seismic graffiti, her own chronological log ignorant of the shogunate's official timeline. Paper burns, but cherrywood holds grudges, she says, handing you one labeled, Tempo 6, Early Spring. The gouges ripple like grain fields after wind. It's a tactile memory, weighty and mute. She admits scholars haven't taken her seriously. They demand date stamps and triangulation. Still, a Dutch natural philosopher bought 2 pieces last year, promising to measure angles with some brass contraption. Debates continue whether these whisper blocks represent data or accidental doodles. Back inside, you see Shunpei brushing a reserved gray wash over rooftops in sheet 5. The wash is so transparent it barely cues the eye but gives buildings a fatigued sag, hinting imminent motion. Details like this turn prints into psychological triggers. Buyers hang them not just for beauty but to rehearse emotional survival. Stare at ruin before breakfast, and actual ruin loses novelty. Lunch break arrives. Bowls of cold soba delivered, sprinkled with shredded nori cut to resemble fishing nets. Conversation migrates to floor cushions. An apprentice jokes about caramelizing sugar on hot iron plates to replicate molten roof tiles. Dessert earthquake simulation. Everyone laughs. You nearly choke on buckwheat. Between bites, Mayo asks if you've ever visited the Imperial Gift Repository where disaster relics are stored. Broken bells, splintered torii, even a sandal flattened paper thin by falling roof tile. She claims the repository houses a 12-meter dyed scroll chronicling the Jinroku quake with more gore than ghost stories. Public not allowed, but certain scholars gain access. Rumor says the scroll's catfish depiction is anatomically wrong. 4 whiskers, not 2. Scholars bicker over whether that indicates a separate mythic species or print workshop error. Debate still unresolved 3 centuries later. Over tea, Hoitsu invites you upstairs to his private studio. Climbing ladder-steep stairs, you enter a narrower chamber whose walls drape with unmounted scrolls. Sunlight slices through shoji, revealing dust like beating wings. He unrolls a half-hidden piece. Not a painting but a preliminary storyboard formed of rapid charcoal thumbnails. Each panel distills an instant. Crowd in market square, first tremor jostling lantern strings, startled catfish leaping from barrel, woman covering child with body, a pagoda cracking but refusing to fall. Your breath catches. In 30 heartbeats of charcoal marks, he delivers the sequence of an entire calamity and a promise of resilience. He confides that these thumbnails will never see market. They serve as choreography guides for larger works. Artists call them memory traps. The phrase nestles into your ribcage, catching memory before memory catches you. He invites critique. You hesitate, who are you to edit a maestro? But he insists. You point out a panel where crowd tilts, yet ground line remains perfectly horizontal. You suggest slanting horizon to amplify dizziness. His eyes widen. He redraws, tilting entire world 5 degrees. The effect feels physically disorienting. He bows, declaring you honorary perspective consultant. Pride warms cheeks. Somewhere inside, your inner catfish does a smug twirl. Afternoon sun angles, lengthening shadows in workshop. Apprentices return to inking duties. The printing rhythm resumes, a whisper whump of barren strokes. You're asked to fan drying prints, a delicate ballet to avoid dust specks. As you wave sacheted fan, faint tremor ripples through floorboards. Barely there, like a distant cart rumble. Barren strokes pause. Everyone goes still. A pot of vermilion tips splashes across palette. Okuma curses softly. Tremor stops. Heartbeats beat heavier than earth. Shunpei wipes spilled red, consequence minimal. Paper gods test nerves, he says. The interruption triggers collective storytelling. Okuma recounts the tale of namazu-e catfish, a legendary print rumored to vibrate minutes before earthquakes. Supposedly carved by an ascetic who etched sutras onto woodblock surfaces too fine for ink to capture. The print is an almost blank sheet. Owners swear they feel it humming in their hands, a tactile scripture. Scholars have hunted copies for decades. None verified. Skeptics call it after-the-fact myth. Others posit piezoelectric interaction between paper fibers and humidity changes. Debate persists, fueling auction prices when so-called copies surface. Late day intensifies mica sparkle on print batch now clipped along bamboo poles. They sway softly, as though breathing. A young street vendor enters, hauling basket of tofu skins. He trades snacks for a handful of test pulls, planning to sell them wrapped around roasted sweet potato. Edible art, momentary and delicious. Hoitsu approves. If viewers swallow fear with sweet, he notes, they'll come back for more. You bite one sample. Soy silk and burnt sugar blend with faint taste of ink. Strangely pleasant. Outside, thunderheads stack over sumida like scoops of black sesame ice. Workshop windows darken. Mayo lights oil lamps strung overhead. Flames flicker in drafts, casting namazu silhouettes that squirm across plaster. The effect unsettles and thrills. Some part of you, still 9 years old inside, wonders if silhouettes can slip free to prowl streets. You remind yourself, illusions are tools. Yet illusions feed myths, and myths shape emergency behavior. A feedback loop of brush, ink, rumor, reality. Historians still wrangle over which came first. Evening nears, but Hoitsu begs a final favor. Escort a stack of fresh prints to a kabuki theater in Nakamura's for stage backdrop reference. He can't leave while blocks wet. You agree, bundling prints inside waterproof oil paper. Stepping out, you find drizzle beginning. Only the crisp ping of first drops on your straw hat. Streets gleam twilight indigo. You plot course through covered arcades, but storm outpaces. Soon rain pours, drumming rooftops, echoing the hollow thud of Geta again. To keep prints safe, you tuck them under arm, raising walking pace. Along the way, lightning forks across sky. Thunder answers deep and rolling. A timpani beneath clacking percussion. A few pedestrians shriek at close flash. You recall some Edoites believe lightning stuns the namazu, pinning it momentarily. An elderly woman beside you mutters thanks to Raijin, banging wooden clappers thrice. Scholars dispute whether there's recorded correlation between storms and quakes. Some claim pressure changes destabilize faults. Others call it coincidental layering of fears. The debate rages, but thunder devilishly underscores every argument. At Nakamura-zie, stagehands haul painted backdrops depicting urban nightscapes. When you reveal fresh prints, headset designer Tsuru mews with delight. He straps a torch to Kizuru pipe mouth, leaning close to inspect lines, praising bruised rooftops. These prints will guide scenic artists overnight, ensuring tomorrow's kabuki disaster act looks authentic. Audience hearts will race. Purse strings will loosen. Commerce in peril thrives yet again. Tsuru hands you a pass to tonight's dress rehearsal. You slip into dark balcony corner. Actors, still half-costumed, practice scene where earth convulses. Stage platform hides wheels that jolt sideways on cue. Floorboards creak. Actors stagger, eyes wide, arms pinwheeling. Despite your day immersed in painted terror, the realism startles. You catch your breath. An attendant triggers basin of colored sand dropped from rafters to mimic falling plaster. The grainy hiss resets your pulse to reality, but gooseflesh lingers. After rehearsal, an actor named Misuzu approaches, skin still powdered ghost white. She confesses stage quakes sometimes coincide with real tremors. Audience screams, uncertain if illusion escalated. She once delivered soliloquy during aftershock. Audience assumed part of script. Applauded louder. Scholars post-event still analyze playbills to determine if certain recorded quakes correspond to scheduled earthquake scenes. But documentation muddied by playhouses retroactively claiming credit. Night drapes deep velvet. Storm passes. Air smells washed clean. You exit theater, heading back through lantern-lit streets. Oil paper bundle now lighter. Tsuru kept half the prints. You carry artists' ledger receipts. Rain's slick stone glimmers. Your reflection, wobbled by puddle ripples, looks surreal. Maybe you're turning into brushstroke. Crossing a footbridge, you pause to see distant workshop windows still lit. Okuma and Mayo likely carving next color blocks by lamplight. You wonder how many more tremors their whisper planks will archive before dawn. Lightning sheet shrinks to pale flicker on horizon, leaving rolling hush. For a moment, you feel city holding inhale. Maybe ground under sandals contemplates stretch. Back at inn, hostess waits with towel and persimmon wine. She eyes oil paper tube. You recount day's adventure, showing one proof print. She gasps, Namazu grin gleams in lamplight. She asks permission to hang it near entrance. Customers need good scare to respect evacuation drills, she says. You agree. In your room, you prop scroll upright. Mica flecks catch candle flickers like fish scales. Clay Namazu seems to smirk wider, as if flattered by portrait. You set bamboo flute against it, then unroll diary, scribbling furious shorthand. Pigment from quake bake tiles, whisper blocks as folk seismograph, horizon tilt dramaturgy. You copy tiny roof bruise technique sketches. Closing entry, you write, ink is vibration made visible paper, a sleeping accelerometer. Tired muscles hum. Brain still inks imaginary lines. You blow out candle. Through shoji, lightning's last farewell traces silhouette on wall. Namazu spine across roof tiles. But thunder is spent, ground content. You stretch, letting tatama sigh beneath weight. Feet float inside memories of wet ink and barren hiss. As eyelids drop, mind replays that charcoal storyboard. City falling, people shielding, fish writhing, world tilting. But ending panel shows lanterns relit, tea poured, prints drying in morning sun. Storytellers understand the cycle. Dread, rupture, Rebuild, retell, repeat. You exhale, trusting narrative arc strong enough to carry you, even if next draft scribbles itself beneath futon. Dawn blushes pale peach across the paper windows, and you wake to the coaxing drip-drip of last night's rain sneaking from the eaves. The inn still dozes. A curl of incense dissolves above the corridor like a lazy dragon. Your throat, meanwhile, feels like someone used it to sand cherry boards. Too much Baron fanning, too little tea. Water, you decide, and not from a dainty teapot this time. Today you want the cold, iron-flavored kind hauled straight from the city's underbelly. Water that has eavesdropped on the earth all night and might still be humming with secrets. Sandals laced, you slip outside. Fog frosts the street just enough to soften the usual clack of geta into a muffled heartbeat. You angle toward Hongo Hill, where rumor insists the deepest communal wells live, old as the shogunate and twice as talkative. Lantern keepers yawn at corners, tipping ash from pipes. They nod as you pass, recognizing the print bundle still tucked under your arm like a sleepy ferret. Mica glitters faint starlight where scroll edges peak, but you've business with darker water today. The first well appears behind a row of persimmon trees, a timber frame straddling a stone mouth, thatched cap pitched like a straw hat against weather tantrums. A stout man in faded indigo sits cross-legged beside it, polishing wooden ladles with river sand. His name, you learn by the wooden placard balanced on his knee, is Tama the listener, water vendor, and seismic consultant. He looks up with a grin so wide his cheeks scrunch into parentheses. Early thirst or early curiosity? He asks, voice thick as miso. You confess you're parched. He motions you closer, then hooks a rattan bucket to the pulley rope. As it descends, the rope twangs softly, an accidental string instrument. Listen, he whispers. The wooden spindle groans, bucket splashes somewhere below, and a hollow boom rolls up the shaft like distant taiko. Deeper than yesterday, he mutters, eyes narrowing at invisible equations. While the bucket climbs, he explains that well sound isn't just echo. It's a diary. If the earth yawns, water trembles, acoustics change. Same way a koto string tightens in dry air. He taps the frame. It returns a throaty thunk. He nods, satisfied, then pours you a dipperful of perfectly chilled water. The taste surprises you. Silky, faint mineral sweetness, a hint of mossy basement. Hydration sluices down your throat like forgiveness. Mainstream historians would slot this well scene into the vast puzzle of Edo's water infrastructure. The city, famously crowded and wooden, survived thanks to a lattice of canals, ponds, and more than 3,000 communal wells fed by natural springs and hand-dug cisterns. The Kanda Aqueduct, completed 1629, carried Tama River snowmelt tens of kilometers via cedar pipes sealed with iron rings. But neighborhoods perched beyond pipe reach, like this one, leaned on artisanal wells to quench thirst and, incidentally, to spy on tectonic gossip. Tama invites you to kneel. He coils one palm around a length of bamboo, thinner than a shakuhachi flute, polished to mirror smoothness. One end dips into the well mouth, the other meets your ear. Speak, friend, he jokes. You comply, pressing ear tentatively. At first you hear only echoing drip, but then, a minute tremor, a granular hiss, as though handfuls of sand swirl far below. It could be groundwater sloshing against stone, yet the pitch carries an anxious quiver. You swallow. He nods again. The water's restless. Felt it around the hour of the tiger. Obscure detail drop. Certain Edo tea masters kept pocket listening reeds, claiming the hollow tubes amplified pre-quake subaudible rumbles, just as sea conchs give whispers to beachcombers. Collectors pay obscene sums for surviving reeds, though skeptics insist any audible effect is placebo stirred by wind across bamboo nodes. The scholarly debate still flickers through journals. Psychoacoustic priming or genuine microseismic coupling? No consensus, but bamboo artisans advertise certified tremor reeds. Anyway, before you return the tube, Tama shows its trick. He flicks the reed's top with a fingernail. It rings a high G-sharp. Pitch low last week, he explains. Water column fluctuates. G-sharp means level dropped, maybe seepage along fault microcrack. You wonder if the reed doubled as a tuning fork in previous life. He shrugs. Everything has two jobs in Edo. A pottery seller hobbles up, balancing a yoke laden with glazed jars. She greets Tama by pouring him rice amber tea from her own stock, then asks, "Well, hum paper yet?" He shakes head. She grimaces, adjusts grip, trudges on. You inquire. Tama tells of days when a deep, steady well hum vibrates so hard sheaves of paper stacked nearby rustle like courting cicadas. Residents call that well-mouth chanting, and take it as ironclad warning. Modern seismologists recorded similar phenomena, intermediate tremors in porous ground creating resonance chambers, but data remains sparse. Academia tussles. Do these infrasounds anticipate big quakes or merely accompany harmless hydropressure shifts? He gestures for you to lower bucket again, this time to chart depth. You see notches carved into the rope at irregular intervals, personal bathymetric ledger. Markings stop about 2 meters above waterline. Below that, Tama says, rope phrase readings wobble, yet he adjusts for shrinkage by measuring how long drips take to echo back. A string of cowrie shells dangles. When bucket bumps shells, they clink, calibrating descent speed. Ingenious but wholly unofficial, no magistrate will put parchment stamp on cowrie chronometer. Children gather, lured by your foreign-looking curiosity. You suspect the ankle bell still chiming. Tama invites them to hush. They comply, hands over mouths, eyes wide. He twangs rope again. The echo this time fatter, like barrel drum. One child squeals, claiming she heard the namazu-e. Another argues it burped. A tiny debate ensues. Do catfish belch? Folk zoology says yes. Natural philosophers remain divided. You propose a compromise. Maybe the fish hiccups tectonic gas pockets. Laughter dissolves tension. Tama pulls out a folded parchment. A crude map dotted with red circles. Listening wells, he explains. He and a few vendors track which wells issue odd echoes on which days, then compare notes over sake. He taps 3 circles in quick succession. Yesterday they all crooned hollow. He suspects northeast subterranean vein draining. If that empties too quick, he warns. Ground above sets easier into shaking. You feel chilled despite warm sunrise. A neighborhood matron appears with twin wooden pails. She bows, then pulls aside your reed by right of local grandmother authority. Ear pressed to well, she murmurs verdict. Water sleeps shallow. Tama scribbles symbol on his parchment. Academics label such grassroots watchers Hydroseismological Guild, though no charter exists. Formally, the first Japanese hydrographic bureau will not open until Meiji era. Still, notebooks like Tama's will someday help historians reconstruct microtremor clusters missing from official logs. You volunteer to draw water for her. She thanks you, but insists on slam test. She lowers bucket then yanks rope abruptly so bucket belly slaps water. Everyone listens. The slap yields a dull plunk. Ripples echo smooth. She beams. House beams safe another day. She explains sharper plunk means water denser, perhaps due to silt stirred by deep vibration. Scholars experimented dropping lead spheres into tanks, measuring rebound to infer turbidity. Results inconclusive, but grant proposals proliferated. After matron leaves, Tama packs ladles, preparing mobile route. He peddles cooled well water mixed with a hint of chrysanthemum syrup, hydration plus courage. You tag along, eager for more auditory alchemy. He slings reed tube in sash like sword. You two weave lanes where wells punctuate each block. Each differs. Stone-lined aristocrat wells with braided hemp covers. Bamboo rim peasants' wells smelling faintly of radish tops. Shrine wells guarded by fox statues that supposedly chase away earth demons. At every stop, Tama samples echo, scribbles notes, pours cups for residents who each pay a single mon and a rumor. Mid-morning sun lifts fog, sharpening roof silhouettes. In a plaza near Kanda Myojin Shrine, a well sits under elaborate cypress canopy. A merchant named Genzo waits, clutching pine bucket. Genzo specializes in well sweets, agar jellies set using ultra-cold draw water. He complains that jelly firmness fluctuates when water vibrates overnight, biting sadness into texture. His customers, mostly kabuki actors with sensitive palates, can detect the faintest quake preview by mouthfeel, or so he claims. Tama tastes sample jelly. Indeed, it jiggles more than elegance allows. He logs, Gel Wobble Index, 5 out of 10. Quirky knowledge flash. Edo confectioners sometimes used quake jelly as cheap fortune-telling. If your cube quivered in hand, they'd predict romance upheaval. Some diaries reference jilted lovers blaming desserts for heartbreak. Folklore studies still argue whether jelly clairvoyance influenced matchmaking rates. Evidence remains gelatinous. Tama now invites you to lead demonstration for onlookers. He hands you reed, says blow across top like flute. You manage breathy hoot that plunges down shaft. Listeners gasp when echo returns layered with faint rumble. A woodblock apprentice swears he felt vibration tickle toes. Possibly suggestive contagion, but you spot ripples in bucket left beside well, water shivers not from wind. Pulse quickens. Tama raises palm. Crowd stills. After a moment, tremor subsides. No lanterns rattle, but conversation volume lifts an octave. A hawker vows to sprinkle rice around doorstep tonight, to wait the house. You note how audio illusions morph into structural safeguards. Nearby, a university-trained Rangaku scholar named Ishihara pushes through, brass ear trumpet tucked under arm. He challenges Tama's interpretations, brandishing treatise by Dutch geologist von Hofmann, who claimed well noise merely echoes barometric swings. Heated discussion ignites. Tama argues data. Rope notch trends, jelly wiggle, reed pitch. Ishihara waves barometer charts, citing atmospheric pressure drop overnight. Crowd picks sides, arguing vigorously yet politely. Typical Edo pastime, more entertaining than puppet theater. Modern academics replicate this brawl in journals. Hydroacoustic anomalies versus meteorological pressure. Researchers install pressure sensors beside wells. Find partial correlations but not enough to dethrone either camp. Debate still unsolved. Peer reviewers reading your future notes will shake heads in déjà vu. As lunch edges nearer, you realize the morning's sips amount to liters. Bladder protests. Public latrine break offers comedic aside. Wooden stalls share thin walls. Two merchants therein discuss reinforcing sake barrels after hearing angry wells. You finish quickly, vowing to log lateral rumor transfer. Back under sun, you rejoin Tama outside a silk dyer's shop where another well hides beneath persimmon-stained grate. This well sings, a bright, flute-like whistle whenever bucket ascends. Dyer insists pitch drifts semitone-sharp moments before mild quakes. Enough to ruin color matching. Silk turquoise shifts to sullen teal. He shows bolt of cloth bruised by yesterday's half-degree warble. Scholars might debate color drifting, but merchants treat it as economic crisis. Dyer hires 2 apprentices solely to tune well by adjusting cap weights, hoping to anticipate pitch creep. Tama tips hat. Your well's diva. He tests reed, whistle resonant. He scribbles. You wonder if an entire earthquake sonata could be composed from well whistles across city. Morning drifts into late afternoon with the soft inevitability of incense smoke climbing a rafter's lattice, and you find yourself strolling toward Asakusa's temple quarter, lulled by 1,000 faint bells clinking like distant wind chimes. The well symphonies of dawn have retreated into memory, leaving ears tuned to subtler vibrations. Those humans create when they jostle for luck. Because if the ground beneath Edo is forever a question mark, then every shrine in the city tries to slap an exclamation point on top of it, preferably one that fits in your purse. Your sandals take you beneath the vermilion torii of Atego Inari, small compared to Grand Sensoji yet bustling with a midday tide of worshippers. A pair of stone kitsune, the fox messengers, guard the entrance. One clutches a rice sheaf in its jaw, the other, curiously, a fat paper fish. You blink. The sculptor clearly had a sense of humor, or perhaps post-quake renovations added anachronistic whimsy. Either way, the omen is too on the nose to pass up. A vendor outside the gate shakes a little wooden lottery barrel called a shozen. Bamboo sticks rattle like dice in a cup. He shouts, "Try your fate. 1 mon to spin time backward or sideways." The sign behind him advertises today's grand prize, a year of quake-free nights, as though fortune itself obeys raffle tickets. You pay anyway, because research sometimes tastes like gullibility coated in soy glaze. He hands you the barrel. You tilt, and a single stick slides out, painted with the kanji arsuwu. He rifles through drawers, produces a tiny folded slip, dongji, middle blessing. Acceptable, neither cosmic doom nor unstoppable joy. The flip side sketches a catfish wearing a priest's stole, bowing politely. Beneath, a poem in wobbly brushwork reads, "When whiskers tremble, lanterns sway, yet roofs still stand. If hearts stay light." You smile. Vendor bows. "Keep it in your sleeve. Paper remembers what you forget." He winks, already shaking the barrel for the next hopeful. Mainstream historians note that shrine lotteries, or kuji, exploded in popularity during the late Edo period as literacy climbed and censorship nipped at more overt gambling. The shogunate tolerated lotteries partly because temples funneled proceeds into reconstruction funds after fires or quakes. Thus chance became civic duty disguised as entertainment. Records from Kenai-ji list detailed sales spikes following every notable tremor, supporting the theory that anxiety drives revenue better than festival drums. Inside the courtyard, smoke from pine torches mingles with the metallic tang of recently polished bells. A cluster of pilgrims circle a giant bronze urn, scooping handfuls of smoldering incense ash to waft over shoulders. Spiritual flea repellent, some joke. You join, swirling faintly cedar-scented mist around your neck. Heat unlatches pores. Tension seeps out like ink spillage. A priest in saffron hakama approaches, hands tucked into sleeves. His eyes crinkle as if he recognizes the restless tourist type. You bow. He reciprocates, then offers a tray piled high with small origami fish folded from washi printed in delicate indigo waves. Each fish has a loop of vermilion string through its mouth. Namazu-e, he says, for protection and philosophical humility. He instructs you to choose without overthinking. Fingers hover, land on one whose paper scales glint with slivers of mica, reminiscent of yesterday's workshop prints. When you slip it into palm, weight surprises there's a pea-sized iron bead sealed inside. So the fish always points earthward, priest explains. Stability on the outside, curiosity within. Somewhere inside ribcage, your personal Richter scale pings. He gestures toward a side altar. There, worshippers line up to practice fortune sticks. Amakuji, another lottery, but vertical. They shake tall hexagonal boxes until a numbered skewer emerges. Attendant exchanges it for a scroll dictating fate in formal poetry. You decline another gamble, your sleeve already rustles. Instead, priest invites you behind curtain to witness new ritual, the silent lottery. In a candlelit chamber, 5 wooden fish, each as long as your arm, hang by silk threads from ceiling beams, their mouths carved open. Beneath each fish is a lacquer bowl filled with polished beans. Worshippers kneel, eyes closed, reach up to tap whichever fish calls to them, then pluck one bean. Color of bean dyed earlier corresponds to fortune tier. The twist: you must rely on subtle air currents and intuition rather than sight or sound, since attendants chant low sutras to mask ambient cues. You volunteer. Knee joints pop as you fold onto tatami. Candle shadows ripple over cedar beams like underwater light. You inhale incense, exhale road dust. Extend hand upward until fingertips graze cool. Unpolished wood of hanging fish number 3. Tap once. Wood resonates faintly, a warm heartbeat. Fingers dip into bowl. Emerge clutching bean-dyed gentle jade. Attendant smiles, another middle blessing. Maybe the universe wants you balanced, neither complacent nor frantic. Historical aside, the silent lottery exists in only 3 shrines, developed allegedly after the 1782 Tenmei famine, when authorities suppressed loud gatherings. Some scholars argue its real purpose was to deter cheating. No rattling means fewer audible cues for conspirators. Debate continues among folklorists whether sensory deprivation increased believer sincerity or merely novelty factor. Back outside, priest ties your origami namazu to varnished rack where hundreds flutter like a metallic blue school mid-swim. Tradition says leaving mid-tier fortunes behind tempts the gods to upgrade results. Yet he allows you to slip second fish, secret extra, into sash for travel. Gift, he says. For your next well. Behind main hall, corridor opens to small annex displaying Emma boards. Cedar plaques where prayers hang. Here, people have drawn catfish in every comedic pose. One balancing pagoda on nose, another strapped under mountaineer like a sled. You add your own quickly sketched plaque. Catfish and well sharing tea and write. May Edo's listeners always have time to stand up. The priest chuckles, stamps it with red seal. He then guides you to treasury room filled with artifacts salvaged from past disasters. Cracked roof tiles, scorched prayer beads, half-melted temple bell clapper. But centerpiece steals breath. A centuries-old silk tapestry depicting deity Kashima pinning gargantuan namazu with obsidian spear. Embroidered eyes of fish appear almost pleading. Curator whispers. Thread count predicts quakes. They mean that over time, humidity cycles alter silk tension. Fine cracks propagate quicker after tremors. Conservators measure microfraying to date seismic events older than written logs. Scientists from modern museums still debate validity. Some call it artifact fatigue, others sea trove of environmental data. You lean close. Indeed, edges look frail, like spider web after autumn gale. The priest invites you for tea inside garden. A miracle of moss and stepping stones sheltered from street clamor. He pours matcha thick enough to coat tongue like rainy afternoon. Conversation drifts. He describes training years in Key Peninsula where monks meditated in sea caves, listening for stone breathing, geological size preceding offshore earthquakes. He claims certain chants harmonize with cave acoustics, lulling earth into gentler motion. Academic geologists interviewed surviving monks. Most dismiss correlation but note lowered cortisol levels among practitioners. Calm minds survive better. A gust shakes maple leaves overhead. Wind chime tinkles. Nearby donation box rattles when child drops coin, startling a pigeon. The priest smiles. Even small gifts tremble. He produces slender scroll. A calligraphy sutra repeated 108 times. Each iteration offset minutely to simulate vibration. He is selling copies to fund repairs of crumbling pagoda foundation. You purchase one. Art meeting structural reinforcement seems fair trade. He returns to Judy's, leaving you free to roam outer stalls. One hawker sells aftershock popcorn, roasted in iron kettle shaped like a catfish. Kernel pops mimic miniature quakes. Children squeal. Another booth markets lacquered walking sticks carved with tiny silver bells. Seller claims they ring in sync with P waves, giving half-second warning before S waves hit. Skeptical? Certainly. Yet a professor from Yoshima Saido inspects sticks keenly, muttering about harmonic resonance. You pause by fortune stick booth again, noticing bucket of spent bamboo skewers. Worker burns them at dusk, believing accumulated fates might overload cosmic ledger. She offers you charred stub as souvenir. You decline, pockets already brimming. Mid-afternoon sun bakes paving stones. Heat mirages shimmy. Crowd density swells. Each new arrival clutching envelope of hopes. A troupe of traveling storytellers sets up near gate, performing humorous kaijin about namazu disguised as courtier trading fake earthquake insurance. Punchlines land as wooden clappers smack air. Laughter stirs wind. Shrine banners ripple. An itinerant scholar in Dutch hat scribbles furiously. He's correlating visitor volume with local seismic tranquility, hypothesizing psychological pressure release. If enough people unburden worry through amikuji, maybe collective tension drops, reducing quake amplitude. Other academics deride as anthropomorphic wishful thinking. Still, data sheets pile. You weave through throng to small side booth where calligrapher paints single kanji on fans based on aura readings. She stares, then brushes endurance. She explains strokes mimic catfish whiskers anchoring in mud. To endure is to root lightly yet flex. Fans rib jingles. Tiny charm shaped like fish scale. You fan yourself, breeze stirring damp hair. As sun slants orange, shrine drums signal closing prayer. You join line before main hall, bow twice, clap twice, bow again. Between palms you whisper unformed wish. Perhaps for quiet nights, perhaps for next curiosity crumb. Brass bell overhead rocks, sending vibration down rope into your bones. You drop coin, step aside. Exiting under red torii, you notice a notice board. New decree from magistrate warns vendors against profiteering via unfounded quake fortunes. Already, someone scrawled rebuttal poem. If ground sells fear, why blame tongues for trading it? Scholars centuries later will debate efficacy of such edicts. Print sales data show spikes anyway. Stomach growls, reminding you lunch slipped into spiritual speculation. You navigate toward stall alley where simmering Odin perfumes air. Vendor recognizes origami fish poking from sash, offers discount bowl. He claims priests bless his daikon with anti-shake prayers. Less soup spillage during mealtime disasters. You slurp gratefully, grateful more for broth than theology. Twilight cloaks district in indigo. Paper lanterns ignite sequentially, each new orb softening shadows. On adjacent stage, a kagura dance unfolds. Dancers in fox masks twirl silk banners painted with stylized seismic waves. Drums beat slower than heartbeat, urging relaxation. Audience hushes. You feel eyelids sag with pleasant fatigue. Walking back along river path, you finger iron-weighted omamori. It swings like tiny pendulum, always pointing groundside. A compass for humility. Bridge planks creak but hold steady. Fireflies bob over reeds, echoing lantern glow. In a pier's balcony lamp welcoming. Inside, hostess already spread fresh futon. She admires new talisman, hanging it near doorway, so rooms don't wander off. You place silent lottery bean on windowsill beside reed and clay namazu. Now trio of oracles, each guarding from different element. Water, earth, fortune. Diary pages open, pen dances. Shrine lotteries funding reconstruction. Tapestry fray as seismic archive. Debates over psychological venting. You paste fortune slip inside cover. Poems ink still wet enough to smudge. You doodle fox with paper fish. Annotate. Kitsune adapt mascots to market fears. Lamp dimmed, you nestle into futon. Through shoji you hear distant gongs marking hour of the boar. Weighted fish charm brushes frame. Faint click soothing as pebble in pond. You breathe slow, aligning exhale with charm's swing. Somewhere outside, someone laughs, maybe winds raffle. Somewhere underground, plates murmur. But for moment even catfish naps under Inari's watchful paws. Your last waking image. Origami fish school fluttering against lacquer rack. Tails whispering lullaby to city that sleeps atop infinite lottery barrel. Waiting for next stick to slide out. Whatever numbers appear, you feel ready to unfold paper, read poem, and walk on. A hush like starched silk settles over Edo after the shrine drums die away. But you are not ready for tatami yet. Curiosity has been fermenting in your chest all evening. Sharp, frothy, overdue to pop its cork. You keep replaying the magistrate's new decree tacked beside the red torii. Profiteering via unfounded quake fortunes will be punished. Who, exactly, gets to label a fortune unfounded? Somewhere, someone inside the shogunate must be drawing a line between sensible preparation and dangerous gossip, and you want to see the chalk dust on their sleeves. So you veer north, past darkened tea houses where last coals sigh, past canals that lie flat as lacquer trays, toward the Higashimaru district, home to Edo's main Bugyosho, the magistrate's hall. By day, it swarms with hat-wearing clerks, samurai guards, and petitioners clutching tear-stained scrolls. By night, oil lamps dwindle to pinpricks, and the courtyard echoes only with the leather crunch of sentries pacing predetermined squares. To arrive unchallenged, you adopt what a kabuki playwright might call catfish mode. Glide slow, stay low, ripple with the current instead of against it. The iron-weighted namazu charm you got at Atego Inari swings beneath your sleeve, tapping wrist like a metronome. Left sleeve hides bamboo listening reed, weaponized curiosity. You feel mildly ridiculous sneaking about with a pocket aquarium's worth of talismans. Yet absurdity often provides the best camouflage. A side lane delivers you to a postern gate where carpenters stacked timber earlier for roof repairs. The planks form accidental staircase to the clay tile wall. One silent hop, a second, and you crouch on top beneath a sickle moon. No thunder of Geta tonight, you slid straw zori over socks for stealth. Below, the governor's herb garden yawns. all dew-heavy mint and whispering bamboo. You drop inside, landing in loam soft as steamed bun. The ankle bell bracelet from the calligrapher gives a single crystalline ting that you smother with a palm. Close call. Bamboo leaves rustle, but guards keep marching, bored into near sleep. You drift through garden shadows until a shoji door glows faint amber. Archive annex. Perfect. The panel slides with a sigh. Unoiled rails confide your presence in the softest voice. Inside, shelves rise floor to ceiling, stuffed with cedarwood kiribako document boxes, each branded by era name and topic. Dust motes quiver in lamplight like tiny startled ghosts. You brace reed tube against ear and tap the nearest shelf. A thin echo warbles back. These boxes are lighter than water buckets, yet they too sing. Heart thumps staccato. You breathe in kettle-cool clarity and work quickly. Start with shelf labeled Suwuji-lu-chi, General Affairs Records, Volume 7. Box slides free. You crack lid, expecting drab petitions about crooked tatama taxes. Instead, rows of bamboo slats bound with twine spill out. Maken log slips, each inked with dates, times, and cramped notes. Catfish barrel at Kenzaki and agitated from 4th period of the dog to 1st period of the boar. No ground motion observed. Next slip, street eel vendor. Kanda ward, fish surfaced repeatedly. Moon partly veiled, humidity 78%. Your pulse quickens. You've stumbled onto the very ledger of aquatic auguries. Mainstream historians teach that by the late Tokugawa period, officials recorded earthquakes with bureaucratic zeal, magnitude estimates, casualty counts, fire outbreaks. Yet few speak of pre-quake omen logs. Some scholarship hints such diaries existed but calls them apocryphal, perhaps private. Now you cradle proof. Here are government scribes noting fish spasms the same way they track rice prices and border skirmishes. Evidently, the state is secretly crowdsourcing catfish data even while scolding shrines for monetizing dread. You gingerly unspool the twine. Ink glistens fresh. Records are current. Each slip begins with the lunar calendar date, then Chinkur Orthukura, then a terse description of fish behavior, barometric reading, sometimes the well depth. A quirky notation appears every few slats. A miniature paw print. Someone uses cat paws to mark particularly credible incidents. Why, you can't guess. Perhaps the clerk owns an office cat and appreciates editorial assistance. Quirky fact drop. Edo offices often kept cats not just for mice but to predict earthquakes. The feline flight reflex is legendary. Some diaries claim that, moments before the 1703 Jinroku quake, all the cats in Honjo Ward simultaneously vaulted onto rooftops, creating what looked like a sudden migration of living roof ornaments. Folklorists still argue whether this is embellished or if cats really staged citywide parkour before tremors. Experimental evidence remains inconclusive because cats refuse to sign consent forms. You slide out a second box labeled Dijin Chanjal GGR, Pre-Tremor Tallies, Volume 2. Inside, parchment charts line up like choreographed dancers. Columns headed catfish, eel, carp, crickets, dogs, well echo, sulfur scent, sky glow. Rows tick off days with brushstroke check marks or circles, some red, some black. A red circle under sky glow coincides with black triangles under catfish and dogs 2 nights before a documented 6.4 quake last month. Someone here is doing proto-statistics, connecting multi-species freakouts to actual seismic outcomes. Yet margin notes reveal internal doubt. One line reads, pattern B holds for far-off quakes, greater than or equal to 110 Ri, but fails for local microshakes. Another note wrestles with the philosophical dilemma. Are fish aware, or merely bothered by same precursor that soon bothers us? Below, ink blot like tear stains suggests coffee-level frustration. A draft report unfolds. An official proposal to classify fish spasms into 4 alert levels. Tail flick, barrel splash, barrel topple, emergency flip. Each escalation triggers stricter rumors control edicts and prepositioning of fire brigades. Historians still debate whether such a color-coded system ever left planning stage. Until tonight, no physical document surfaced. You stifle an incredulous chuckle. The Tokugawa version of DEFCON involves slippery carpentry. Footsteps. A sleepy guard approaching. You douse lamp, swap to moonlight. Heart ricochets. You burrow behind shelving, clutching box lids closed with knees. Guard enters, yawns, relights lamp, mumbles about draft. He notices nothing amiss. Pulls ledger to record nightly patrol time. Mouse quiet, lantern steady. He exits, lamp in hand, leaving archive dim again. You exhale. Palms sweat. The origami namazu in sash rustles, barely audible yet comforting. Folded paper solidarity. You resume search, this time for top-tier shelf label Jinmi restricted. Ladder creaks but holds. Box is massive, sealed by cord waxed with the shogun's chrysanthemum crest. Instinct says leave shut. Curiosity snips wax. Inside. A single thick scroll, edges encoded with vermilion stamps. Title, Ansei Earthquake Provisional Strategy, though Ansei Quake is still 20 years away in your timeline. This, apparently, is forward planning, like writing a will before having children. Scroll details theoretical Great Edo rupture scenario. Predicted magnitude, firestorm probabilities, evacuation routes grouped by class rank. Citizen foot traffic is channeled along riverside embankments while samurai families get direct palace corridors. Appendices map fish alarm clusters around breweries, bathhouses, even well of your friend Tama. Data cross-checked with Chinese treatises on dragon veins. Final paragraph orders establishment of covert observation huts, staffed by monks trained to measure electric air smell. Ozone, perhaps, in tandem with fish agitation. Academic dispute alert. Modern earth science journals periodically resurrect the idea of pre-seismic ionospheric perturbations. Satellite data hint at anomalies days before big quakes, but skeptics blame solar storms. That Tokugawa bureaucrats considered electric smell centuries earlier will ignite another conference brawl once discovered. Scroll edges quake in your trembling fingers. You roll it gently, replace seal with melted tallow scraped from candle stub, hoping guards never notice slight fragrance change. Box slips back with near-silent clunk. But one little bamboo slip has dislodged, fluttering under shelf. You retrieve. A casual memo dated yesterday. Kanda River fishermen report catfish stillers. Eel frenzied. Advocating level 2 watch. Chief clerk skeptical. Demands Dutch glass seismograph confirmation. The tug-of-war between folk indicators and Western instruments is alive right here, right now. You pocket slip, too valuable. But conscience protests. Stealing archive material crosses line. You compromise. Transcribe slip onto blank prayer paper you carried from shrine. Then replace original. Ink from your travel brush scratches quick. Handwriting passable imitation. Historians of future may puzzle over subtle ink chemistry swap. Let them earn their meal. Time to leave. But you spot one final curiosity. On desk lies a wooden abacus modified with extra colored beads labeled F and R. A note explains, F equals fish events past 10 days. R equals actual recorded quakes. Clerk slides beads nightly to adjust correlation coefficient. Quirky ingenuity warms heart. Excel spreadsheet avant la lettre. Your silent sandals carry you back to herb garden. Suddenly, far toward Sumida, a temple bell rings unscheduled 2 times. Night birds scatter. You wait, no ground motion, but air tenses like string tuned sharp. Could be routine bell test or cat scare. Either way, you're done here. Wall scramble leaves palms chalky. Moon hides behind thin cloud. Alley welcomes you like co-conspirator. You slip through labyrinth of shuttered markets until lanterns reappear. Only then adrenaline drains, replaced by giddy awe. You just rummaged state secrets that prove government's reliance on same fish folklore it publicly shames. Irony symmetrical as tatami weave. Back at inn, hostess long asleep. You light stub candle and spread new notes across floor. The silent lottery bean sits sentinel, reflecting flame. You diagram 4-tier catfish alert. Convert re to modern kilometers. Jot potential research questions. Why base level fish stillness precedes eel frenzy? Where are observation huts located? You star Tama's well. Now part of official grid. Mainstream historical side note. The Tenpo reforms, 1830s, famously aimed to curb extravagance, tighten finances, and discourage rumor-mongering. Your discovery suggests reforms had secret funding for earthquake spy network. Contradictory motives baked into same edict loaf. Scholars will feast on that paradox. Quirky tidbit for diary. Cat paw editorial stamps. You sketch paw print. Label possible feline quality control. Academic controversy phrase delivered. Historians still debate whether Tokugawa collectors sought scientific truth, or just bureaucratic scapegoats for inevitable calamity. Check. You tuck recollections safe. Read. Namazu charm. Bean. Calligraphy fan. All informants. Fatigue licks eyelids. But one more task. Using read, you listen to courtyard pond outside window. Water hushes steady. No sand hiss. Good. Clay namazu by pillow picks up glow. Grin steady. You blow candle. Darkness folds like archival scroll, storing night's secrets until scholars pry them open centuries later. As you drift towards sleep, cat paw stamp tip-taps across imagination, sealing dreams with ink of intrigue. The next morning you surface from sleep like a diver breaking through pond ice, gasping, squinting, and unsure which world is colder. The archive escapade left an aftertaste of lacquer and parchment in your throat. You need something hotter than gossip, stronger than green tea, and preferably wrapped in steam. Luckily, Edo provides. You head for the tea-house district where intellectual arguments steep as fiercely as sencha. The streets are still rubbing sleep from their eyes. Carp-shaped kites sway on rooftop poles, catching faint dawn breeze like weather vanes for childish prophecy. If tails whip east, rumor says the day will crack its knuckles. If west, the ground will stretch and settle. Today, they twitch indecisively. You tuck bamboo reed under sash, namazu charm dangling like a mute bell, and follow the aroma of roasting barley toward the famed oichaya, a tea-house notorious for serving scholarly debate with every pot. Inside, cedar benches surround a sunken hearth where rice husk embers glow. Patrons span the city's social DNA. A Rangaku professor polishing wire-rimmed spectacles, a half-drunk kabuki playwright scribbling stage directions on his sleeve, 3 soba porters discussing shrimp prices, and a ronin whose hand rarely strays far from the lacquer saya at his hip. At the center, a low dais hosts a circle of debaters. They call themselves the Shindo Salon, the Ground Movement Society, and they convene whenever Edo jitters. You slide onto tatami just as a waitress delivers bowls of dobin mushi, mushroom broth served in teapot-like earthenware. Steam coils upward, carrying the scent of yuzu peel that prickles nostrils awake. The ronin tips his bowl back, then slams it down so hard the table rattles. See? He grins. No earthquake sneaky when you keep porcelain nerves. Laughter ripples, but the professor counters. You'd ignore a P-wave and blame the glaze for clinking. The host, a stooped aristocrat in sky-blue haori, bangs a bamboo gavel. Actually a hollow carp sculpture repurposed. Topic of the day, he announces, is institutional truth versus street intuition. He nods at you, eyes twinkling as if he senses last night's heist. Our visitor brings fresh observations. The debate floor tilts your way like a stage trapdoor. You clear throat, summarizing the slip you copied. Catfish stillness plus eel frenzy equals level 2 watch. Gasps flutter. The playwright's brush freezes mid-stroke. Mainstream context warms the room. The professor reminds everyone that in 1844 Dutch engineer Jan de Rijke demonstrated a glass pendulum seismograph to Edo astronomers. A fragile bulb that inked tremors onto smoked paper. The shogunate imported 2 models. One sits in the magistrate hall basement you just rifled. So, the professor asks, shall we trust fish or glass? The porters side with fish. They've never seen glass warn them before lanterns crash. The ronin votes for whichever sloshes first. Sake in cup or catfish in barrel. Waitress refills your teacup, and you drop the bamboo reed inside as prop. Ibob's drawing eyes. You explain Tama's well-listening guild and the reed's pitch shift G-sharp. The playwright squeals. He wants to script a scene where lovers exchange reeds instead of letters. The pitch revealing emotion or impending doom. Academic eyebrows arch. The host proposes an experiment. Subject the room to controlled vibration. Everyone nods at carpenter's apprentice seated near doorway. He fetches a weighted mallet used for tamping clay floors. On host's signal, he thumps the dais once. Teacups jitter, the professor's glass pen flickers. The reed inside your cup vibrates a faint quiver. The namazu charm bumps wrist. The Ronin's hand twitches toward hilt by reflex. Notably, 2 porcelain sake bottles rattle louder than anything else. Apprentice repeats strike at different tempo. Coffeehouse seismology in action. The professor notes that cups with thicker rims sing lower, akin to distant quakes. Thin porcelain rings high, like nearby jolts. He scribbles frequencies on scrap. We might calibrate dishware as domestic seismoscope, he murmurs. Debate erupts. Could households standardize bowl thickness for early warning? The playwright loves it. Comedic potential when cheap bowls refuse to participate. The Ronin grumbles about effete solutions. Quirky historical nugget surfaces. A minor Kyoto potter once marketed earthquake mugs, deliberately tuned to hum below human hearing threshold. Owners claimed headaches before quakes. Half of Edo swore by them until a prankster proved wind drafts could fake the hum. The fad collapsed like, an ill-framed roof. Scholars today still sift shards, arguing whether pottery truly picked up infrasound or mass suggestion did the lifting. Just then, the ceiling rafters utter a soft talk, nothing strong. Maybe shrinkage pops or small tremor. Conversation hushes. Everyone listens. Reed in cup twangs a half note. Sake bottles answer with tremolo. The room rides a barely perceptible sway. 30 heartbeats later, stillness returns. The Ronin exhales. Training cut. Real fight later. Nervous chuckles spark. The host bangs carp gavel again. Observation logged. He reaches for enormous ledger binding where attendees sign daily phenomena. Pages already bristle with sketches of catfish, bar graphs of noodle broth viscosity, notes on cricket chorus durations. You add your signature next to a doodle of reed and paw print, citing talk event. Data without poetry is ledger without ink. The host quotes. Academic circles still debate whether such eclectic ledgers qualify as proto-scientific documentation or glorified pub trivia. Future doctoral theses will duel across that fault line for generations. Mid-debate, a breathless boy bursts in waving government bulletin sheets hot from the woodblock press. Headline: Shogunate announces pilot seismic council, invites Rangaku experts. Eyes widen. The professor snatches sheet, scanning. The council will compare Dutch instruments to select citizen observations of living creatures beginning next lunar month. The host cackles. At last, bureaucracy wants our barroom babble. Yet footnote warns, unauthorized rumor propagation remains punishable. Duality has never been more Tokugawa. The playwright begins choreographing a chorus of bureaucrats waltzing with Catfish. Outside, sunlight tilts toward afternoon amber. Debate adjourns. Participants scatter. The Ronin invites you for sword grip boiled eggs at Riverside stall. Protein before patrol, he jokes. On way, you both test new theory. You hold reed near ground while he taps scabbard on bridge plank. The reed sings faintly. He respects invisible shakuhachi within. You trade contacts. He wants to order custom reed to sheath inside saya, calling it Earth Whisper Blade. Along the walkway, willow branches trail water, sketching tremor circles that fade quick. You and Ronin part at Yayabashi. He toward dojo, you downstream after rumor of a recently imported brass quake barrel, displayed at a silk guild hall. Legend claims it's designed by Chinese polymath Zhang Heng centuries earlier. Copper jar with 8 dragon heads. When ground shakes, a ball drops into open frog mouth, indicating direction. Mainstream historians celebrate Zhang's device as world's first directional seismoscope. Replicas tour Asia. But Edo artisans doubt authenticity, suspecting modern forgery sold for silver. Academics battle. Some metallurgists cite casting seems inconsistent with period. Others find microabrasions matching antique tools. The fight crackles more fiercely than the barrel sometimes does. You reach guild hall where Q snakes outdoor. Admission to Mon. Inside, the barrel stands on dais, dragon mouths polished bright. Curator invites attendees to clap. Nothing. He asks two strong lads to stomp floorboards. Still quiet. He winks, gives pedestal subtle kick. South-facing dragon spits bronze ball into frog tray. Crowd gasps. You frown, sense stagecraft. Yet uncontrolled quakes earlier gave no drop. Maybe mechanism jammed by Edo humidity. You note in diary. Artifact may require recalibration or skepticism. A guild elder corners curator. Your Dragon Ball fell south, but last tremor came east. Curator stutters about timber resonance. Debate plants seeds of doubt. Outside, some visitors vow to build simpler devices, bamboo chimes, reed bundles, anything less theatrical. Gadget's failure ironically fuels citizen innovation. A pattern you'll see again after every scientific misstep. Evening descends. Lantern vendors light wicks along embankment, turning river into molten ribbon. You spot Tama the well listener setting up stall. Chrysanthemum water and gossip refills. He beams when you recount magistrate ledger discovery. His reaction, a mix of pride and mischievous vindication, proves grassroots data desire legitimacy. He refuses payment for drink. Researchers drink free, he says. While sipping, you notice a line of nuns from the convent of the White Lotus collecting donation rice. Legend claims their silent prayers calm seismic spirits within 49 blocks. No proof, but porters swear warehouses along their route burn less often. Scholars acknowledge correlation yet debate causation, a recurring refrain swaddling every Edo superstition. Fireflies wink as you meander back toward inn, but travel slows when commotion bursts at corner sake shop. A stone weight crashed through roof tile. Shopkeeper cries sabotage. Onlookers whisper omen. You inspect rock, smooth river pebble. Could have been flung by kids or jarred loose by microquake. The professor from Salon appears with portable balance scale, weighs stone, notes likely origin from Kanda riverbed based on mineral flecks. You jot detail, stones migrating skyward, curious motif for later folklore. Past curfew bell, you slip through in gate. Hostess waits with basin of hot water for foot soak, bliss. She asks about dragons spitting balls. Rumor traveled fast. You admit skepticism. She shrugs. If barrels spit rice cakes, I'd believe. Vet varmstus. In room, clay namazu greets from windowsill. You add salon ledger copy to diary. Paste shogunate bulletin clipping. Sketch dragon device. You annotate academic conflict lines. Device authenticity disputed. Domestic dishware seismoscope concept. Psychology versus physics. Before bed, you unroll host's ledger page and test read pitch. It slides back to high G sharp. Comforting? Not sure. Weight charm still points earthward. You twirl bean from silent lottery between fingers. Middle blessing stands. Tatami accepts tired limbs. You dim lamp. Outside, night orchestra starts. Crickets, distant shamisen, occasional clinker of late oxcart. You practice breathing in cadence learned at Shindo Salon. For beats inhale, hold 2, exhale 6. Martial arts meets barroom calmness. Reed rests on chest. Tiny stethoscope amplifying heartbeat. Sleep tiptoes, but final thought lingers. Tomorrow the pilot seismic council meeting rumor might spark. Government will invite experts. Maybe you can sneak in disguised as reed vendor or tea courier. If fish folklore and Dutch glass will share same table, you intend to eavesdrop. With that plan tucked like scroll beneath pillow, you roll into dream space where dragons, catfish, and porcelain bowls argue direction of next quake, each louder than last. Sleep slips away like the last echo of a temple bell, and you rise before dawn with the taste of cedar smoke and anticipation on your tongue. The night's dream, dragons jangling coins, porcelain bowls singing, catfish slapping water at a round table, still clings to the rims of your thoughts, but urgency pushes it aside. Today is the inaugural session of the brand new Seismic Council, the place where government officials, Dutch-trained scholars, shrine priests, and everyday riverfolk will bicker over whose warning signs deserve to be etched into law. You have no formal invitation, only a courier's disguise. A plain brown yukata, straw hat big enough to shade nervous eyes, and a slim tag marked urgent tea deliveries. It's the sort of costume Edo guards glance at once and forget forever, which is exactly the plan. The Kanto Astronomical Bureau looms darker than the pre-dawn sky, its lacquered gates locked in rigid symmetry, as if geometry alone could hold the archipelago steady. Plum trees flank the entry path, pruned so severely they seem to bow in apology for whatever the earth might do next. A pair of gatekeepers, half asleep inside lamplight halos, wave you through after tapping your tag. Evidently, caffeine outranks clearance in a country that topples as often as it rebuilds. In the forecourt you find the morning's caste assembling. Shinto priests swishing prayer wands, samurai clerks with abacuses dangling beside swords, Dutch scholars polishing copper monocles, fishermen guarding sloshing buckets, even a shy pottery merchant balancing a stack of thin-rimmed sake cups wrapped in rice straw. The air thrums with low chatter, every sentence orbiting the same unspoken question. Will this council pick one truth or stitch together a patchwork big enough to blanket the entire city? You press your bamboo listening reed against wrist like a secret stethoscope and drift to the edge of the group, a courier among couriers, waiting for the hall doors to slide. They open with the hush of rice paper on calligraphy. Magistrate Ishizaka enters first, a tall man whose shoulders carry the ledger weight of every collapsed roof in recent memory. Beside him walks Professor Doi of the Tokugawa Observatory, spectacles flashing candlelight, hair combed into orderly waves that promise methodological rigor. Everyone bows. You bow deeper, hat brim sweeping floorboards, then shuffle to a bench just wide enough for two anxious souls. The bench next door creaks as a river fisherman, the very Kichigoro who once handed you a bamboo pole, settles with a grin and a splashing bucket. His catfish inside is as long as your shin and twice as unimpressed by ceremony. Without preamble, the magistrate orders the Dutch pendulum seismograph unveiled. Assistants roll in a crate. The lid lifts to reveal a glass bell jar, within which a delicate brass pendulum dangles above smoked paper like a poet's quill over fresh miso. Professor Doi launches into a lecture about sensitivity thresholds, P waves, S waves, and how a stylus scribble arrives several seconds faster than an untrained human can react. You catch the fisherman's eye. His sideways shrug says fishtails can beat seconds with minutes if you know how to listen. Yet when an aide tests the machine by kicking a floor beam, the pendulum trembles and inks a wormy line, drawing murmurs of bureaucratic awe. Ink on paper, apparently, looks more trustworthy than rumors splashing inside wooden barrels. The next demonstration belongs to Priestess Ko from Kashima Shrine, who produces a lattice box filled with chirping crickets. She explains that silence among them has foreshadowed tremors in 17 of 29 logged instances at her temple. Ishizaka wants sample size, humidity control, barometric calibration. She counters that crickets do not consult barometers before shutting up. They simply sense what they sense. A clerk jots notes. Professor Doi marks possible temperature influence in the margin of his ledger. In a room lined with lacquer and silk, insect testimony feels almost scandalous. Now it's the fisherman's turn. Kichigoro steps forward, hoisting bucket high enough for the front row to witness its sloshing universe. When he removes the lid, the catfish unleashes a spiral fit to spray the magistrate's sandals, then settles into an ominous stillness. Kichigoro recounts a Sagami Bay tremor last month. Clockwise spins for exactly 1 hour, then a magnitude 5 shake. He brings rope-notch diaries, tide logs, even a barley tea stain proving time of day. The samurai scribes glance between fish and Dutch glass, clearly torn between swords and scroll rigor and the undeniable charisma of a creature that might, or might not, feel tectonic whispers in its swim bladder. At this point, the clerk circulates a witness ledger. You sign Uchida the reed vendor, and, under observations, describe yesterday's Shindo salon experiment where reed pitch dipped and porcelain bowls hummed moments before a mild roof beam knock. Ishizaka reads every line aloud, lips tightening only when he hits yours, perhaps recognizing rumor he never authorized for public ears. But Professor Doi requests a demonstration, so you oblige. Reed upright, fingertip flick. The clear G-sharp rings through the hall. Doi has an aide slide a tall shoji door to fake tremor vibration. The reed's tone warbles a fraction flat, and Ko's crickets freeze in simultaneous hush. The magistrate's brows jump, though his mouth maintains bureaucratic neutrality. Sunlight stalks through lattice windows as the debate heats. Should Edo trust Dutch glass alone, or merge fish spasms, cricket silences, bowl rattles, and well echoes into a tapestry of early warning? Samurai clerks lean toward single-source precision. Priests fear instruments will fail during festival blackouts. Fishermen argue that nothing breaks faster than glass in a quake. You, still adopting courier humility, drop a polite bombshell. Rumor says the government already keeps secret fish ledgers inside the magistrate's own annex. Gasps flit corner to corner. Ishizaka clears his throat but neither confirms nor denies, which is denial's shy cousin. The table tilts appreciably toward multi-indicator consensus. A gong announces midday recess. Bento boxes appear, lids painted with catfish chasing screaming frogs. Rice molded into little mountains wobbles at the slightest tap, turning lunch into edible seismic drill. On the veranda you sit beside Priestess Ko, who shows you braided prayer tablets woven from so-called earthquake flax. Plants rumored to burst into bloom after big shocks. She confesses she has no proof the flax senses anything. But faith, like lacquer, cures under stress. Over her shoulder you spy Professor Doi wiping sauce off a page of differential equations, perhaps calculating how many crickets equal one glass pendulum in predictive power. Back inside the council hall, benches and carpets have been rearranged into a makeshift test range. A file of porcelain bowls of various thicknesses, Kichigoro-esque catfish bucket tied to a dais, the Dutch seismograph on a rolling sled, and, most theatrical of all, an imported brass barrel modeled on Zhang Heng's ancient Chinese seismoscope, its 8 dragon heads clutching bronze balls poised above frog mouths. The curator claims the barrel can pinpoint direction of ground motion, though rumors say a hidden lever does most of the work. 2 laborers are instructed to stomp floorboards in escalating force so the council can witness comparative reactions. The first stomp nudges the catfish into a lazy twirl. Reed tone dips. Porcelain cups ring faintly. Seismograph scribble jitters. The dragon barrel spits nothing. The second stomp makes the catfish whirlpool. Bowls crack hairlines. Reed drops another semitone. Pendulum skitters wild. And one bronze ball tumbles south with a clang suspiciously louder than the stomp itself. Some officials cheer at the directional data. Others eye the curator's foot. The third stomp is so forceful it rattles ceiling dust. But by then the squid ink luminous scroll in the far corner still refuses to glow, sealing its fate as today's most expensive joke. A clerk tallies lead times. Fishtail slap first, reed echo second, cricket hush tied with porcelain hum, glass pendulum third, dragon barrel and luminous scroll trailing last. Professor Doi sketches a crude formula blending folk and glass, multiplying by humidity correction. Ishizaka announces provisional adoption of a hybrid alert ladder. Fish agitation triggers increased instrument vigilance, which then greenlights citywide bells if magnitude crosses threshold. Priests applaud. Fishermen beam. Samurai clerks sigh at the paperwork this will breed. Just as satisfaction peaks, a messenger pigeon blurs through an open transom and skids onto the floorboards, bamboo capsule clacking. The note reports a minor tremor in Yokohama half an hour earlier, right when Kichigoro-esque catfish began circling. Serendipity or planted theater? You can't tell, but the timing seals the vote. Historians decades hence will squabble over pigeon authenticity, some calling it the first instance of bureaucratic performance art, others naming it a happy accident. The joy ride breaks when Ishizaka receives whispered news that austerity budgets will fund only half the proposed network. Debate spirals down to bargaining. First phase stations near densely packed wooden neighborhoods, optional measurement huts along rice depots. Fish keepers negotiate rice stipends. Priests volunteer prayer rotations at no cost. Dutch scholars insist on at least 2 replacement pendulums. Glass shatters, after all. Ink scratches vellum. Compromise emerges as untidy as every Edo street. You slip out before dusk, carrying a bureau notebook Doi pressed into your hands. A reward, he said, for reed ingenuity and willingness to lend the instrument for calibration. The notebook's chrysanthemum seal gives you future access should you need it, effectively converting courier disguise into semi-official standing. Outside the gates, streets buzz with news that some fish are now government employees. Printmakers hawk fresh namazu-e of samurai bowing to barrels while catfish dole out tax exemptions. You buy one, partly for diary color, partly because satire funds truth. At the Shindo Salon Tea House, evening finds you retelling the day's theater. The Rangaku professor toasts the catfish's victory. The porters compose a shanty about glass that shatters before fish tails tire. And the playwright scribbles sequel, tentatively titled, The Scales of Justice. The Ronin brandishes his reed ensaya prototype. Unsheathing it sings a note that rattles chopsticks 3 tables over. Someone suggests forging a whole orchestra of sword reeds, turning dojo drills into seismic concerts. Laughter drowns speculation, but inside each chuckle sits a seed of possibility. Edo is fertile ground for unlikely hybrids. When you finally return to the inn, the moon has climbed halfway toward midnight, painting roof tiles silver blue. The hostess greets you with a basin of steaming water for your feet and gossip for your ears. Merchants already betting on which ward's fish will file first official complaint about overtime. You soak, sigh, then spread the council leaflet, catfish print, and personal notes across tatami. In the diary you log key details. Read lead time, cricket silence ratio, Dragon Ball skepticism, pigeon stunt suspicion. You underline future historian debate points. Did early warning shave casualties in later decades? Or did it simply shift blame each time? You paste today's bento wrapper, frogs forever chased by namazu, between pages as edible footnote. Before sleep, you step onto veranda with listening read newly absent from sash. Its echo now serving government calibration. The courtyard pond glistens calm. No frogs leap. Weighted namazu charm points earthward as always. Humility's compass. Somewhere upstream, Kichigoro no doubt tells catfish hero stories to apprentices who half believe, half fear their buckets have just become military equipment. Sliding doors hush shut, lamps dim to amber pearls, and you lie down rehearsing the council's breathing cadence. Inhale for curiosity, hold for caution, exhale for collective hope. Tatami warmth rises. Wind brushes shoji screens. Somewhere a porcelain bowl hums faintly as wooden eaves settle. Your eyelids drift toward dreams where crickets audit budgets. Pendulums learn to dance. And the whole restless archipelago stretches just enough to remind you to listen harder tomorrow. Dawn washes the roof tiles of Edo Castle in a glaze of pearl pink. And you stand at the outer moat whispering a silent apology to your aching calves. Yesterday's council marathon promised you front row science. Today promises something rarer. Access to the shogun's own seismic secrets. Rumor, delivered over breakfast miso by a bathhouse gossip, claims that beneath the huge stone walls sleeps a private chamber where daimyo engineers test contraptions too delicate or too politically volatile to expose to council scrutiny. In other words, the invitation you hold in trembling fingers is a velvet-gloved admission that the shogunate trusts fish but still hedges bets with machinery no fisherman will ever see. The pass looks innocuous. A thin cedar slat stamped with triple halaha crest and inked, Provisional Technician, Eastern Service Gate, 5th Hour, Inspection of Civil Works. Its weight feels disproportionate, as if cold authority has mass. You tuck namazu charm deep in sleeve so nothing metal betrays your pulse and cross the bridge into Kitanamaru Ward where guards hold spears at parade rest but eyes hawk-sharp. They verify your tag, then wave you through an undercroft smelling of granite, candle grease, and rain-sodden hemp rope. Inside, torches reveal corridors branching like cedar roots. Somewhere far above, swans glide across the moat in perfect unconcern. A junior steward guides you down steps so steep they might qualify as vertical alleys. Lantern light dips, rises. Moisture beads on stone. When you reach bottom, the air is 10 degrees cooler and hums faintly, like a conch pressed to ear. The steward speaks barely above a whisper. We call it the Kuranamazu Vault. He confides that only 3 others hold keys. Chief Carpenter, Master Armorsmith, and a mathematician imported from Nagasaki who refuses to wear kimono belts because pressure around stomach interferes with thinking. The steward's mouth quirks, respectful yet bemused. He unlocks a cedar door banded with iron braces. Hinges growl. Inside sits a room neither grand nor humble. Flagstone floor, low ceiling braced by cedar beams as thick as temple drums, and everywhere racks of wooden boxes labeled in chalk. But your gaze magnetizes to the centerpiece. A circular pit ringed by polished brass, about 3 arm spans wide. Suspended above it by silk cords is a lattice bowl woven of bamboo and lacquer, inside which thrashes another catfish. Massive, perhaps half your height, and beneath the creature, a shallow pool of mercury ripples, mirroring its every convulsion in quicksilver waves. The steward explains that the shogun's top natural philosopher, Hayashi Gendo, designed the floating mirror. The idea: a namazu suspended just close enough to feel electromagnetic whispers seeping through bedrock, but not so low it shocks itself on mercury. When the fish thrashes, surf breaks on a ring of inverted copper horns that convert motion into faint clicks, relayed up tubes to guards stationed in watchtowers. Mainstream historians know Hayashi for star charts and irrigation wheels, but this device appears nowhere in public annals. Cloak of secrecy stitched by fear of panic if peasants learn castle keeps fish alarm bigger than theirs. The notion that rulers share peasant superstitions would shrink bureaucratic mystique faster than wet leather. A lacquered cabinet houses thin parchment strips, obsidian black calligraphy, one for each catfish alarm event. You skim a few. 8th day, 9th month, 7th hour. Violent thrash, copper horns clacked thrice, no ground motion. Next, 3rd day, 12th month, dawn, slow coil, 2 clicks, minor quake Ukiyo-e. The pattern is clear. More false positives than garden rumors. Yet enough hits to keep the experiment funded. You wonder how many candles of debate this data would set aflame at the council. Across the room stands another marvel. A wooden cylinder taller than a rice barrel, banded with brass rings and topped by a glass dome. Inside, a free-hanging metal needle hovers over a layer of iron filings. The steward calls it the terra compass and taps a gong. The needle shakes, filings dance, then settle in a shape reminiscent of a chrysanthemum in stiff wind. According to Hayashi, subterranean electric currents twist the field before big quakes. Needle quivers, filings bloom. Academic circles in Nagasaki fought furious battles over whether such currents even exist. Some Dutch physicians argued the apparatus merely records humidity static, while Chinese geomancers called it plagiarism of dragon vein theory. The dispute remains unsettled, each camp citing limited observations and an occasional spectacular misreading. Ledger books on a shelf reveal that last year the terra compass predicted a tremor 3 days early. Needle oscillations grew frantic, filings sprayed against glass like iron rain. In response, the castle quietly stockpiled rice near outer gates and loosened warehouse burlap ties. When the quake arrived, rice avalanched safely onto wooden pallets instead of bursting sacks. Publicly, officials credited efficient inventory rotation. Privately, the compass likely earned another year of research budget. The steward points out a note in margins. If compass fails thrice consecutively, device shall be decommissioned. Bureaucracy's sword dangles above every invention. On the far wall hangs a row of ornate masks. No faces carved from cypress. The serene Kao-mote maiden, the fierce Hanya demon, the wistful Okina elder. Slender copper wires run from each mask to a hidden mechanism. The steward flips a lever. Mouths open, tongues of silk protrude, weighted by lead beads. Gravity sensors. When ground tilts, beads pull tongues, masks scream, by slapping shutters high above courtyard. The idea came from a stage carpenter who noted that actors sense wobbly floorboards before the audience notices. Quirky as it sounds, 2 years ago the maiden mask triggered during a pre-dawn foreshock, waking gate guards who seized torches and prevented lantern racks from toppling into stored gunpowder. Historians who later pore over fire brigade reports will scratch heads at the line, "Saved by screaming maiden in basement." They will argue whether clerks poeticized machinery, or if castle staff deliriously misheard with joints snapping. You step closer to Catfish Pit. The creature eyes you, barbels feeling unseen currents. Its tail twitches once, sending mercury lapping silver ruffles against brass ring. A soft clack follows. Somewhere above, a copper horn registers the signal. The steward jots time and tail angle onto a slate. He confesses only 4 people know how to interpret the Catfish code, and they disagree on units. Hayashi reads thrash velocity. Carpenter reads splash height. Court astrologer counts pauses between clicks, comparing them to constellation gaps. Scholars centuries later will debate whether this interdisciplinary confusion crippled the device or spurred more nuanced warning equations. Footnotes will duel. Suddenly the terra compass needle quivers, iron filings stir. Barely. The steward freezes, eyebrow arched. Catfish gill slits flare but body remains calm. You and steward hold breath for 6 heartbeats. 10. Filings settle. Catfish relaxes. False tease. The steward exhales. Happens when cooks pound machi upstairs. He admits, half embarrassed. You imagine council scholars burning nights over data skewed by rice cakes. He escorts you through side tunnel into auxiliary vault stocked with spare parts. Copper horns shaped like dragon snouts, jars of mercury sealed with fish skin parchment, chests of magnetite lumps, and a basket of dull bamboo flutes identical to the reed you surrendered yesterday. Tags read, "For resonance experimentation." A document pinned nearby explains that Hayashi wants to run harmonic tests. Place flutes at varying depths under gardens. Record pitch shifts before quakes. The note includes formula scribbles, fractions of airflow over square root of ground tension. Looks like your reed has cousins in higher places. Mainstream fact surfaces. Edo's elite often commission private engineers to earthquake-proof treasures. Gilded screens, porcelain towers, even imperial regalia held in spring-suspended boxes. Archaeologists excavating castle ruins centuries later find brass coil shock absorbers antedating Western patents by decades. Yet official chronicles barely mention them, likely because knowing the daimyo protected their tea bowls better than peasants' roofs could incite unrest. That tension between secrecy and survival thrums throughout the vault. You sign the inspection ledger per steward's instruction. Alias still holds. He seals your signature with vermilion stamp, then offers quick tour of surface-level watchtowers where copper horns protrude. As you ascend spiral stairs, the hum you felt earlier clarifies. Hollow bricks amplify any horn click, channeling vibration to tower floorboards. Guards feel tremors through soles before ears register sound. Those guards stand barefooted even in snow season, the price of early warning. At tower parapet the city sprawls. Tiled roofs ripple like dragon scales. Sumida River glints pewter. Laundry lines flap semaphore. A guard named Hachiro greets you while polishing one of the horns. He claims he can tell difference between catfish thrash and passing oxcart by resonance length. You ask how often horns mislead. He answers with grin. Same as people breathe lies, often but not fatal. He reveals quirky side hustle. Sells miniature wooden horns as good luck charms to merchants. Claims each purchase reduces hoax by 1. Historians will later discuss economic benefits of privatized anxiety management. While chatting, you notice a low rumble, not physical but social, rising from city square below. A crowd thickens around street puppeteer staging a satire of yesterday's council outcome. Tiny catfish marionette whip strings, scaring glass pendulum doll into faint. Laughter reaches tower like bubbly aftershock. Hachiro watches fondly. He says humor vents pressure that plates alone cannot. Some modern psychologists will echo sentiment, crediting earthquake folklore performances with lowering communal cortisol. Others will argue effect anecdotal at best. The debate, like ground beneath Edo, will keep shifting. Back underground, Steward presents farewell gift. A slim notebook embossed with chrysanthemum crest identical to Doy's, but this one marked Field Collaborator, Class B. Essentially, castle sponsorship to gather external data. He requests you supply well-listening logs and read frequencies, promising small bags of polished rice in return. You shake on it. Papers trade hands. Alliances braid. Exiting castle complex. Daylight feels brighter, gravity lighter. Still, your mind loops on contradictions. The shogunate funds secret fish mirrors yet chastises villages for clay namazu hustle. Installs copper horns yet debates glass superiority. Embraces read research yet budgets cut council expansion. Complexity breeds resilience maybe, like layered bamboo in castle gates. Many slats bending together. Your feet drift toward Tama's wells. You owe the guild fresh gossip. On the way you pass a sake brewery advertising Horn Terrace draft. aged in barrels propped on mini copper cones to absorb earth anger. Inside, brewer Meiji offers sample. Flavor surprisingly crisp. He claims vibrations micro-oxygenate mash, replicating mountain spring turbulence. He cites a Dutch paper Doi wrote, but absolutely did not say that. Marketing or misreading. Either way, a Meiji's barrels lineup forms accidental seismic laboratory. Each barrel fitted with reed whistle. When ground trembles, harmonics shift, altering fermentation notes. You jot mental note, taste the quake. Outside, Tama awaits by central well. You share castle revelations in hushed awe. He records catfish horn system with charcoal, labeling, State Mirror Mercury Pond. He exclaims the council underfunds fish but castle crowns them. Debate among his guild will rage. Whether to petition for horn grants or remain discreet. Fear of seizure weighs. Evening slinks in as you and Tama part ways. Lanterns bloom. Banners wave prints of screaming no mask sold as festival gag. People mimic mask shrieks for laughs. Unaware such faces in vault guard their safety. Contradictions again. Shindo Salon tea house glows, inviting amber. The professor and Ronin spar verbally over whose instrument would have detected today's non-existent tremor first. You produce your new notebook. The room hushes while you sketch mercury pit, copper horns, terra compass. Playwright's eyes widen. He vows to stage Mirror of the Quicksilver Moon next season. Porters debate whether mercury fumes cause hallucinations of prequakes. Academic voices argue toxicity versus negligible exposure. No consensus. Tea refills. Night deepens, you walk home along canals. Moonset tints water milky gold. Your charm taps wrist, steady beat. In courtyard pond, koi glide unconcerned. Before bed you log castle machines. Mainstream note on early shock absorbers, quirky mask alarms, academic dispute on electromagnetic precursors. You underline historian question. Did secrecy save lives or starve broader science? Ink dries. Mercury sheen haunts memory. Lantern guttering. You place notebook beside clay namazu. Readless but triumphant. Dream eases in, whispering copper horns over silent wells. Fishtails painting ripples on silver moons. And masks whose silent screams echo long after woodworm dust. The rooster outside your inn oversleeps for once. But you do not. Dawn's first breath sneaks through shoji screens and taps you awake with the faint smell of kiln smoke drifting in from the tilemaker's quarter. Your calves still twinge from yesterday's descent into the castle vault. Yet curiosity nips harder than muscle ache and drags you out to greet a sky washed milk gray by early autumn haze. The city rests in that hush between lamp snuff and market roar, when wooden shoes pause as if reconsidering the day's negotiations with gravity. You roll the new chrysanthemum embossed notebook into your sleeve, slip weighted namazu charm against wrist, and head toward Kamagata Hill, where rumor claims an experimental roof tile workshop has sprouted like a mushroom after rain. Along the way you notice subtle changes. Scaffolding festooned with drying cedar poles hugs more facades than yesterday, and carpenters confer in low voices while touching wood as gently as physicians checking pulses. Evidently the hybrid alert system blessed by the Seismic Council has, in less than 24 hours, inspired landlords to hedge bets with structural upgrades. A rice broker haggles with a boatman over the price of fire-retardant plaster. Two nunneries schedule joint prayer shifts, arguing that rotating sutra acoustics might soothe subterranean spirits better than monotone vigil. This is Edo in microcosm. The moment knowledge ripples, the city sets its loom clacking, weaving new customs faster than thread can cool. You reach the tilemakers just as their kills yawn open, exhaling a heat so thick it layers the morning air like lacquer. The boss, Gafuka-san, short, boulder-shouldered, with eyebrows blackened by soot, greets you with a nod that flicks cinders into his beard. He remembers you from ordering replacement ridge caps after last spring's windstorm, and seems amused you've arrived before breakfast bell. He leads you between stacks of raw clay shingles stamped with spiral patterns you haven't seen before. Ridges slanted not straight, corners thickened like armor joints, underbellies hollowed into honeycomb lattices. You run a finger over sawtooth edges. They nip skin lightly, like a warning bite from a tea house cat. Gafuku explains that traditional tiles, though beautifully curved to spill rain, tend to detach in earthquakes, turning alleys into missile ranges. His new design, christened treble hook onigawara, features 3 secret claws along the underside that latch onto roof laths. He demonstrates by sliding one tile atop a cedar batten. Gentle push sideways and it locks with a thunk reminiscent of a merchant slamming abacus. To remove it, he must twist and lift, movements unlikely when the earth heaves vertically. The inspiration. A lucky fishing hook he claims snagged 2 catfish with 1 cast. Quirky origin story aside, the prototype looks convincing. Mainstream historians, he says, still credit the Horyuji pagoda for pioneering flexible roofs, eaves strung like wooden hammocks to sway during storms, but rarely mention tilemakers' micro-innovations that keep those eaves from snowballing debris. He grumbles that scribes chase dramatic fires, not quiet prevention, then ushers you toward a kiln where assistants remove glowing tiles with iron tongs shaped like bird beaks. The clay blushes orange, then cools toward slate. One assistant wields bamboo mallet, striking each tile's belly. The pitch reveals internal fractures. Gafuka listens the way Tama listens to wells. When a tile sings flat, he sets it aside, destined for ground-level paving instead of sky duty. You ask how he predicts demand. He taps your chrysanthemum notebook. Court wants rooftops that stay put. Samurai pay first. Merchants follow to appear prudent. Peasants invent excuses too. He quotes last year's injunction forcing low-income wards to reserve communal tin boxes of spare tiles. Each aftershock empties boxes overnight. Academic circles, you remark, still debate whether such mandates alleviated disaster poverty or simply shifted burden to neighborhood councils. He shrugs, debate never mortared a roof. At midday he tests the treble hook design atop a shaking platform, essentially 4 laborers heaving a sled. Tiles rattle but refuse flight. Meanwhile, a stack of standard S-tiles leaps free after 3rd jounce, splintering on yard stones. Gafuka beams like a father at joint military review. You jot data. Amplitude approximated 1 tatama length, frequency 2 stomps per breath, hook retention 100%. He stamps your notebook with inked claw mark shorthand blessing, he claims. You lunch together on grilled sweet potato discs dusted with chili salt, the heat enough to erase memory of kiln scorch. Gafuku confides a rumor. A Kyoto potter recently patented interlocking clay shingles shaped like tortoise shells. Edo Guild elders dismiss it as Kansai flamboyance, but the rumor alone pushes local artisans to tweak molds nightly, chasing bragging rights. Competition, he says, is the safest quake insurance. Makes people continuously distrust yesterday's best idea. Historians centuries hence will parse kiln records to map technological arms races along fault lines, yet leadership credit will still spark conference feuds. After lunch, you help haul cooling tiles up a ramp toward demonstration cottage perched halfway downhill. The cottage, built on experimental spring joints, looks like a cedar boat balanced on 2 drumsticks. Inside waits architect Yamabuki, slender, eyes ringed with sleepless zeal. She greets you with ink-smudged bow, then shows blueprints pinned on rice paper. Walls layered like pastry, wattle, bamboo, compressed straw, then clay plaster. Each layer decoupled by eel skin strips acting as dry lubricants. She claims eel skin's natural oil reduces friction, allowing microslides during tremor. Quirky detail indeed, house dressed in sushi ingredients. You laugh. She smiles grimly, telling how her team harvested the skins from eelmongers along Sumida who'd otherwise discard them. Recycling meets safety. Mainstream knowledge surfaces. Edo regulations after the Great Mairiki fire already mandated plaster firebreak walls, yet tremor resilience remained afterthought. Yamabuki now advocates dual-hazard design, structures that inhale both flame and quake stress without choking. Academic peers debate if hybrid systems dilute specialization, but municipal cash flows toward multi-tool solutions. Pragmatism beats purity. Yamabuki invites you onto platform rigged with sliding joists. Laborers energize ropes. Cottage sways, floors slant. Your stomach jogs memories of river ferries. Yet the treble hook tiles overhead merely creak. She points to eel skin seams. They soften groans of bamboo lath, absorbing microtorsion. When motion stops, walls resettle like breathing chest. No cracks, You exhale louder than cottage. She reveals next phase. Embedding copper wires beneath plaster, connecting to reed whistle mounted under eaves. When ground tension increases, wires deform, reed trills, alerting occupants to step outside before the main jolt. You recall Castle Terra Compass and grin at convergent thinking. She confesses borrowed concept from Dutch treatise on strain gauges. Book smuggled in a tofu barrel because censors flagged galvanic diagrams as suspicious. Academic controversy still flares. Whether Western elasticity models outpace centuries of Japanese joinery heuristics. She sees value in mashup. You nod, scribbling cultural cross-lamination equal to cross-laminated beams. Dusk nears. Tile roofs blaze copper under sunset. Yamabuki locks cottage door, thanking you for couriering council notes earlier. Apparently rumor of your involvement leaked. She gifts you 3 pocket-sized treble hooks dangling on silk cords, miniature charms to ward off falling debris. You slide one onto namazu chain. Fish and claw now dance wrist duet, protection from below and above. On return path, you detour to Tama's well. Evening cicadas shriek like ungreased saws while he lowers bucket. Echo deeper than yesterday. He frowns. Tide dropping abnormally. He logs reading, draws flame symbol next to number. You mention eel skin seams. He laughs, wonders if wells could line shafts with eel hide to dampen collapse. Might taste fishy, but worth study. Academic journals one day will print section titled Ichthyological Engineering, footnoting this conversation with eyebrow raised. Lamplight lanterns flicker as you weave into Shindo Salon. Porters sing sea shanty about hooking budgets to roofs. Professor recalculates resonance of hollow honeycomb tiles. Ronin rehearses unsheathing sword reed inside eel-skinned dojo mock-up. Playwright recites new lines. When tiles hold fast, may hearts do same. Puns land. Laughter rips. A small hush when messenger bursts with broadside hot from block press. Magistrate approves tax rebate for roof hook installations. Guild compliance mandatory. Cheers erupt mixed with groans about overtime. Yet fine print warns suppliers against profiteering via unvetted designs untaxed by carpentry board. Debate flares. Does treble hook count as vetted? Yamabuki's credentials borderline. They skirt central guild to accelerate innovation. Porters worry raids. Professor shrugs. Science loves chaos. Historians later sort licensing kerfuffles, citing them as early case study in innovation versus regulation. Night deepens. You exit toward in under umbrella roof of calm sky. Moonrise reveals rooftops glimmering like fish scales. Edo shimmering in armor forged by fear and ingenuity. Adin porch, hostess displays new treble hooks strung across entry lintel like wind chimes. She purchased dozen after magistrate notice hit stalls. They clack pleasingly in night breeze, promising to hold even if world pirouettes. In your room, clay namazu watches as you paste fresh pages. Diagram of tile claws, eel skin seam cross-section. Note, hook requires 9 degrees twist removal. You flag academic dispute. Whether honeycomb hollows damp vibrations or amplify them. You also log Tama's flame symbol with arrow to tide anomaly, vow to cross-check in morning. Before laying down, you stand beneath in's rafters gently jumping. Tiles above whisper but do not shift. Satisfaction sips through bones. You ease onto futon. Feet chant memory of kiln heat, cottage sway, copper horns echo inside imagination. Weighted charm rests near pulse. Claws glint whenever lantern ember flutters. You exhale long, savoring knowledge that rooftops might cling tighter when night loosens ground. As eyelids sink, dreamscape unfurls. An Edo skyline where treble hook tiles interlock like puzzle dragons. Eel seams slither through walls. Copper wires hum lullabies. And catfish deep below nod approval. Overhead, a single no mask smiles, tongue silent, because tonight there is nothing to scream about. Only the gentle settling of a city learning to hug itself stronger. You wake in the violet hush just before sunrise. That in-between hour when Edo's alley cats negotiate turf with yawns instead of claws and carp beneath garden bridges hold their last dream of infinite breadcrumbs. A thin rain has begun. More mist than droplets. Beating along roof ridges and slipping off treble hook tiles in neat silver rows. You lie still for half a breath, listening for the telltale pitter of leaks, but Yamabuki's eel skin seams must be doing their job. Not a single splash taps the tatami. The namazu charm at your wrist twitches against skin, almost impatient, as if nudging you. Enough horizontal research, vertical adventures await. Outside, the city smells washed and promising. Merchants haven't yet rolled up shutters, but you can feel their hands twitching behind paper screens. Overnight, every wall in Edo seems to have acquired a fresh strip of woodblock posters printed in unsettling crimson. Stay prepared. Official earthquake drill tonight. Hour of the cock. Beneath the headline, smaller lines remind citizens to lash cupboards, check well ropes, and keep a bucket of water at every door. A woodcut depicts Magistrate Ishizaka bowing to a catfish in bureaucratic humility. You grin. Satire overtook official decree so fast that even satire now quotes itself as policy. The drill is scheduled for the precise moment when night markets crest in noise, intentional theater to test panic responses. Your mind immediately leaps to two questions. Who coordinates such a grand public rehearsal? And how will it sync every warning system from castle horns to well-listener reads? Answering those questions means tracking down Yoshima Saito's Rangaku professor, who, rumor says, has secretly been tasked with timing the whole performance using astronomical calculations and a portable Dutch pocket chronometer tucked in his obi. The path to the academy climbs through Kanda's Bookseller's Lane, where early risers unload bundles of new prints. A hawker thrusts one under your nose. 53 Stations of the Shakkaido, an obvious parody of Hiroshige's travel series, except every station depicts panicked travelers sprinting while namazu surf tidal waves. You buy a copy for copper change. The hawker throws in a paper whistle to practice screaming in key. Quirky detail. Edo whistle makers calibrate pitches using eyebrow tension, or so the hawker claims. At the academy gate you find Professor Doi pacing beneath a dripping ginkgo, flipping his chronometer open and shut with nervous frequency. He brightens when he sees you, perhaps relieved to recognize a fellow conspirator in the city-wide experiment. He waves you into the lecture hall, empty except for a single long table covered in apparatus. Reed bundles sorted by length, a cricket cage fitted with a revolving drum to simulate darkness, 2 treble hook tiles wired to copper strips, and a miniature glass pendulum seismograph scaled down for portability. On a chalkboard Doi has sketched a giant equation, half Latin letters, half kanji, linking fish response probability to public drill compliance. He explains the plan in hushed excitement. At the first bell of the cock hour, a runner will light a fuse of low-smoke firecrackers buried under the square outside the magistrate hall. The muffled pops will mimic a mid-range quake. Simultaneously, castle guards will strike copper horns thrice. Priests at 15 shrines will chant the opening line of the Heart Sutra in unison. And fireworks specialists at Ryogoku Bridge will send up a single silent rocket whose burst pattern spells the kanji-gen, quake. Meanwhile, Shindo Salon volunteers will stage a controlled bull rattle demonstration to gauge how quickly the market stalls quiet. It's an orchestra of terror, but carefully tuned to stay within safe decibel limits. Your role, says Doi, is to help calibrate the read signals along the Kanda to Ninebashi corridor, 5 wells, 3 brewery ponds, and 1 eel vendor's barrel. Each site has been issued a reed tune to concert G-sharp. When the castle horns sound, keepers must blow reed thrice, passing the warning yodel downstream. You arch an eyebrow. Reed owner training usually spans days, not hours. Doi shrugs, quoting the philosopher Wang Yongming. To know and not act is to not know. Translation. Throw them in the river and they'll remember how to swim. He hands you a ledger minus half its pages. The rest, he admits, were soaked when a castle messenger dropped it into a footbath. Across the top, corridor resonance verification sheet. Columns. Time, site, read pitch, response latency, public reaction notes. Historians in your head applaud. Data before drama. But you also notice a splash of red ink beside the final box. Return sheets to bureau? Non-compliance punishable by confiscation of satirical prints. Edo authorities no pain points. You leave the academy with an accomplice. Mayo, the apprentice printer who once fanned drying namazu-e. She volunteered after sneaking Doi's pocket telescope home and discovering the moons of Jupiter. Now she has stars in her ambition and a spare baron in her sash, in case anyone needs flattening. Her enthusiasm feels like second sunrise. First stop is the Riverside Brewery. Umeji, the brewer, greets you over vats that bubble like cauldrons of foamy planets. He's installed reed whistles into bamboo bungs on each barrel lid. A quick test shows pitch dipping when fermentation heat rises. You log 432 Hz baseline. Umeji jokes the barrels now sing sake lullabies to themselves. You warn him not to confuse real quake horns with drunken whistles. He promises to keep sober till midnight. Downriver, Tama's well awaits. The guild has hung lanterns shaped like little hooks in honor of new roof tiles, entangling reflections in dark water. Tama tests his reed. Pitch slightly flat, well depth higher after night rain. He chalks arrow up on his rope, marking hydrological memory. You both discuss drill timing. Tama wonders aloud whether scaring citizens might increase rather than reduce casualties. You respond with mainstream history. The Jinroku tsunami evacuation drills of Awa province cut losses by half. Yet historians still argue whether fear-induced stampedes offset gains in some villages. The debate will likely echo long after tonight's ledger closes. Next, the eel vendor. He's skeptical. Says blowing reeds scares eels into knots, ruining flavor. Mayo negotiates. He can sell quake-ready eel skewers, at premium if drill draws foot traffic. Commerce wins. Pitch recorded. Quirky aside. He wraps skewers in paper printed with seismic advice from famous courtesans. It sells like gossip. Afternoon slides toward gold. The corridor resonates with rehearsal toots. Children pretend to be frogmouth dragons, spitting pebbles as bronze balls. At each checkpoint you and Mayo stamp leaf patterns beside pitch values. More fun than numbers but equally mnemonic. Eventually your ledger columns glow with multicolored annotations. Green leaves good response, brown leaves sluggish. As dusk sinks, the city metamorphoses. Lanterns drape balconies. Well buckets line doorways. Some families tether goats near exits, claiming they feel safer with portable milk post-quake. Historians will later debate whether livestock evacuation pilots started tonight or earlier fire drills. Footnotes ping pong. Vendors hawk snacks dubbed tremor tempura. Shrimp fried so light it shivers. You grab 2 cones. Munch while strolling toward the salon headquarters for final coordination. Inside, the Shindo crowd resembles a backstage troupe before curtain. The Ronin polishes sword reed, scabbard glimmering. Porters arrange porcelain bowls in octave order to play Ekigo Jishur when jostled. The playwright paces, reciting instructions. Stallholders must freeze at horn blasts, then recite safety haiku. If they forget lines, they pay 1 mon to quake relief funds. Comedy of penalties meets civic virtue. Hour of the dog arrives. Anticipation thickens. You take position at Nyanbashi Trafficking Center. Ideal vantage for ripple study. Mayo climbs bridge railing. Telescope ready to catch silent rocket burst. Lantern reflections jitter on canal. Market chatter simmers. Then, first horn from castle low, mournful. Your chest vibrates as if catfish tail brushed ribcage. A beat later, second horn. Street hushes. Even carpenters drop mallets. Third horn. Firecracker fuses under magistrate square sputter. Deep pops ripple stones. Temple bells reply. Priests chant sutra opening. Overhead, silent rocket blooms. Fireworks stenciling done across star-dotted silk. Gasps turn heads. Some children clap. You lift whistle, blow 3 G-sharp blasts. The sound slices through hush like a bamboo falcon. Down corridor, you hear echoing whistles. Umeji's brewery first, then Tama's well, then eel vendor. Ledger timestamp scribble behind memory. Latency 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3. Porcelain bowls rattle courtesy of porters. Chiming high notes but no shattering. Vendors recite haiku. Some stumble, laughter bubbles, tension diffused. So far, orchestrated chaos holds tune. Suddenly, a real tremor? No, tile roof there rattles, but likely courtesy of stagehands rocking beam. You recall Castle Vault's maiden mask. Wonder if it screams in solidarity. Crowd waits for bigger jolt that never arrives. Relief sigh migrates like breeze. As contingency, city watchmen ignite pine branch torches, marching perimeter to simulate firefighting mobilization. The glow paints walls amber. You note citizen compliance. Moderate. One banker tries to flee with ledgers, but Ronan blocks path, quoting safety haiku. Banker sulks, ledger saved. Mayo spots him through telescope, sketches caricature on barren wrapper. 15 minutes pass. Magistrate herald announces drill end. People applaud themselves. Vendors unwrap resumed trade. Children brandish paper whistles, proud of contribution. Historians in future will debate drill efficacy. Some statistics will credit tonight with shaving minutes off evacuation times in 1855. Others will blame it for complacency after false alarms. Footnotes: prepare swords. You deliver ledger to bureau courier under lantern by carp-shaped flag. He scans leaves, nods approval, stamps chrysanthemum. Copy to Professor Doi scheduled tomorrow. Night not done. Shindo Salon convenes debrief. Over Yuzusake you all swap stories. Umeji bragging about whistle harmony. Tama musing that well echo dropped slight half note right before horns. A coincidence? Professor believes pressure change from crowd movement. Argument begins. Historians still may cite tonight's shouting as first documented use of mass-weight acoustic masking theory. Playwright toasts. May rehearsals stay rarer than performances. A sober hush salutes that wish. Walking home, you note city's new posture. Buckets remain by doors, whistles dangle from belts, treble hook posters glimmer in lamplight, but laughter reclaims alleys. Fear repackaged into ritual, sold as memory, worn as talisman. Typical Edo adaptation dance. At inn, hostess brews ginger tea for hoarse throats. In guests compare whistle pitches, turning corridor into bamboo aviary. You retreat to room, paste tonight's corridor sheet beside catfish horn sketch. You underline mainstream takeaway. Coordinated drills foster shared rhythm. Add quirky footnote. Goat milk evacuation plan. Mark academic dispute. Drills versus complacency. Diary grows fat. Namazu charm, now joined by treble hook miniature. Taps wrist thrice. Echoing horns. You blow out lamp. Let darkness settle like well water. Outside, no rumble follows. Only distant shamisen practicing slow lullaby. You picture castle copper horns cooling. Reeds drying. Crickets regaining chirp. And catfish in mercury dreaming silvered waves. Sleep drifts in, carrying image of Edo as giant musical instrument. Each citizen a reed or ceramic bowl, waiting to play the next movement in Earth's symphony. And somewhere below, tectonic metronome tick-ticks, patient, impartial, already composing encore. The day after the grand drill dawns with a hush so delicate it feels borrowed, as if the city agreed to tiptoe around its own echo. You stand on Nyanbashi Bridge where yesterday's reed alarms ricocheted down alleys, and the memory lingers like a faint afterimage in the air. Peddlers still test bowl pitches by flicking fingernails, and children puff their leftover whistles at pigeons. But it's clear Edo has inhaled a collective breath and is still deciding how deeply to exhale. You don't blame it. Any orchestra needs silence before the next movement. Yet you have little patience for domestic quiet today, because you've heard of a coastal village to the east where salt piles speak. Literally. And you intend to press your ear to their crystalline gossip. Salt, according to last night's salon rumor, is the only thing that outranks catfish in the spiritual hierarchy of pre-quake talismans. A messenger from the fishing hamlet of Shirbahama insisted their elders build shoulder-high salt cones along the shoreline each autumn. If a cone collapses for no obvious reason, villagers swear a tsunami will follow inside 3 tides. Mainstream scholars largely ignore this, citing wind and humidity as culprits, while folklorists collect the stories like seashells, each one chipped yet strangely musical. Your notebook yawns for first-hand data. By the hour of the dragon you are aboard a shallow skiff crewed by 3 brothers who look carved from sun-baked teak. The boat's bow displays a fresh treble hook tile lashed like a lucky charm. Apparently roof innovations double as figureheads now. The eldest brother, Jen, squints at sky then at your wrist talismans. Land listens with ears, he mutters. Sea listens with salt. You tuck charm under sleeve lest it argue back. The Sumida, flushed by last night's drizzle, moves faster than usual. Piers blur past. Warehouses relashed, buckets still lingering. A stray goat bleeding indignantly from a ferry deck. Someone took livestock evacuation plans to heart. At river mouth, brackish chop nibbles hull. You note wave cadence, thinking of those copper horns miles upriver. Do they record seawater heartbeats too? The notion feels delicious and slightly mad. Open bay air carries a distant tang of seaweed mixed with charcoal from village kills. By late morning, the skiff noses onto Shibahama's tidal flats, and you wade ankle-deep through ripples warm as tea. On shore stand salt cones, dozens of them, rising like quiet pagodas of pure white. Some as tall as you, some smaller, each perfectly symmetrical until wind or fate decides otherwise. Villagers stop packing fish crates to greet you with wary nods. They recognize city cloth. They also recognize curiosity. An elder named Obasan Fumi, cheeks seemed like autumn fields, steps forward gripping a bamboo rake chalked with salt dust. She asks whether you are scroll collector or fear buyer. You answer, listener. She seems satisfied enough to permit a tour. Each cone starts life as seawater boiled in shallow iron pans perched over driftwood fires. The resulting brine crystallizes on woven mats. Workers scrape crystals, heap them onto reed cores, then plaster more damp salt, smoothing sides in spiral motions. When finished, builders slash a single notch on leeward face, an intentional fault line. Salt must have a chosen weakness, Fumi explains, slicing air with her rake. Otherwise it shatters everywhere. Mainstream historians rarely document this design nuance. Perhaps they ignore women's engineering. Fumi leads you to a cone that collapsed 2 nights before Ansei Edo earthquake in 1855. She was 15 then. She remembers soundless crumble at dusk, as if air tugged grains away in long inhalation. Minutes later the ground flexed, sea withdrew, and villagers sprinted uphill before black walls of water reclaimed shore. Some academics dismiss her timeline. Records say tide first receded nearly an hour after ground shook in Edo, but diaries from other coastal hamlets match her version. The debate wedges conference rooms for decades. Quirky aside surfaces. Salt cone watchers sometimes mix powdered cuttlefish ink into outer layer. If collapse reveals black streak, elders declare tide monster warning level, Kuronamazu. Children run barrel drums across village, thumping hearts into legs until they reach Shrine Hill. Today no cone sports black veins. Good sign or complacency. You kneel beside a pristine cone, press ear gently. Surprisingly, it hums. Dry grains vibrating in breeze sound like distant rain on bamboo leaves. You remember Tama's wells, wonder if grains resonate differently under shifting barometric pressure. You borrow Mio's portable chalk slate, mark tonal impression, cone number 17, gentle hiss, pitch 3 kHz. A fisherman named Taro scoffs, says pitch rises before sea hides. You record his claim, they could be right. Salt might track humidity drop preceding offshore quakes. The brothers from skiff carry you inland to their smokehouse where eel skins hang like wind chimes. Yamabuki would envy supply. Jen rolls a skin between fingers, says roofers sent requests the day council approved tax rebate. Supply chain ripple visible even here. You buy 3 skins for Yamabuki, pay with newest satirical print. Workers laugh at magistrate cuddling fish. Humor is currency. Afternoon swell fades to lazy lap. You head ridgeward following elders to Stone Ear, a basalt outcrop shaped uncannily like a shell. Fishermen rest palms against cold surface, believing rock amplifies sub-ocean tremors. You mimic them. After a minute's stillness you catch faint thrumming. Could be distant wave trains, could be blood in ears. Fumi claims stronger pulses come hours before quakes. Modern seismologists with broadband sensors might confirm microseisms, but your notebook simply notes pulse. Stone Ear midday, amplitude gentle, frequency indeterminate. Scholars will dispute anecdote value, yet you prefer messy stories over sterile nulls. Evening tides nudge boats onto sand. You join villagers mending nets under lanterns fashioned from glazed clam shells. Fumi hands you bowl of seaweed soup. She asks if Edo's roof hooks truly keep tiles from flight. You recount Yamabuki's honeycomb testing. Fumi counters with question. What prevents pine shards from pierces that roof when sea drags forest onto city? You have an answer. You write, structural innovation meets ecosystem aggression. Night drapes shore. Lantern glow halos cones, turning them into ghost pagodas. Fumi invites you to stay on watch. Salt ears seldom sleep. You accept, curling on reed mat between cones, breeze licking soot from hair. Moon splits clouds and lays silver across mounds. You trace collapse notch, wonder if tectonic shiver might travel all the way up grains and reach fingertips before feet notice ground shift. The thought tunnels into brain, you half-sleep eyes open. Sometime past midnight, a cone sighs, a breath of sliding sand. You bolt upright. Fumi already kneeling, lantern raised. A palm-sized slump forms at notch of cone number 12. No wind. Everyone silent. The slump halts. Elder presses ear, listens, stands. False whisper, she declares. Villagers relax, but tension hangs like line uncut. You log. Mini shear, potential humidity cause. Academic footnote seeded. Dawn again pale and quick. Cones intact except minor slump. Fisherman launch boats, you board skiff with brothers. Fumi gifts jar of brine crystals. Tell stone men of Edo salt also speaks, she says. Crossing bay, you imagine copper horns and catfish mirror calibrating to same pulse that teased salt overnight. Interconnected sensors, one empire-wide creature. Back in city by noon, you hustle to Yamabuki's site delivering eel skins, recounting salt collapse. She scribbles potential moisture indicator algorithm, sticks jar of crystals on her materials shelf between cowrie shells and magnetite lumps. She muses adding salt gutters to roof corners. Claims sliding grains could jingle reed chimes beneath eaves. Folk physics meets architecture. At Shindo Salon debrief, Professor Doi salivates at new data. He wants to dissolve salt in mercury to observe conductivity change. Everyone gags. Ronin proposes sword testing cones. Slash they hold, quake they fall. Playwright schedules new act, The Brine Oracle, starring salt mounds singing in falsetto. Porters ask Fumi next harvest schedule. Potential salt trade spark. Tama arrives with startling bulletin. Wells inside city dropped 6 handspans overnight. Echo pitch sharp. Correlates to cone slump? Debate ignites. Some argue rainfall infiltration path. Others foresee offshore slip. You remember margin note in magistrate ledger. Pattern B for distant quakes. Anxiety climbs like cat up paper wall. Night revives lanterns but hush deeper. Citizens tie extra ropes across shelves. Keep sandals by door. No official alarm yet. Your namazu-e charm brushes wrist faster. You blow reed. Pitch steady high. Comfort. You retreat to in. Hostess spreads eel skin seam sample across door lintel. Belt for building. She jokes salt jar under pillow ensures sweet dreams. Not tsunamis. You laugh hollow but accept. Diary time. Sketch salt cone. Track slump. Record well drop. Mark academic dispute. Humidity versus seismic prelude. Paste clamshell lantern shard. Close notebook heavy. Lantern dims. Outside. Far in east. Thunder grumbles. Not sky. Maybe ocean. You listen, uncertain whether it's ordinary storm or stone ear rumbling across water. Clay namazu tilts, shadow grins stretched. Sleep circles wary but inevitable. In dream, salt cones crumble like hourglasses, pouring grains into copper horns, which blow wind into catfish mirror, which flicks tail, rippling mercury that paints congitan across moon. You wake before impact, but city still quiet. Only furnace of your heartbeat forging new questions. The day crawls in under an iron gray sky, the sort that seems hammered flat against the rooftops to press every sound down into the canals. You wake before the inn's charcoal braziers can crackle alive, but the city is already murmuring in a new dialect, its syllables stitched from sleeplessness and low-grade dread. Yesterday's rumor about falling salt and rising well water has outpaced the ox carts. During the darkest hour, villagers must have padded from door to door, repeating the news like monks fingering prayer beads, because by first light every intersection bristles with impromptu discussion circles. People hunched over reed whistles, weighing them in calloused palms as if trying to decide whether air is heavier today than yesterday. Your own lungs feel denser, as though each inhale must be negotiated. You slip outside into a drizzle so fine it moves sideways, an oblique mist that slides across the streets without puddling. Treble hook tiles shed it in noisy cascades while eel skin seems glisten. Glancing upward you catch one more subtle difference. Elders have thrown ropes over terracotta urns perched along the second-floor balconies, then tied those ropes to rafters. The urns are counterweights now, improvised shock absorbers. Edo adapts even when half asleep. Your first destination is Tama's primary well near the Kanda embankment. He asked you in a hastily folded note to meet at dawn. When you arrive he is already crouched by the stone lip, bamboo listening tube pressed against ear, eyes narrowed like a storyteller reaching for the next twist. He looks up and mouths one word, "Hollow." You drop to knees, accept the tube. Inside, the echo isn't the comfortable baritone of pooled groundwater. It's a thin tenor, too bright, as if the water column shrank overnight by another handspan. He has carved new notch on rope third in 2 days. The ledger board beside the well now hosts a cluster of charcoal arrows, all trending down. People crowd behind you, forming a silent arc. A rice porter whispers that Sumida River briefly reversed flow near dawn, sucking brackish water upriver. A street dancer counters that her koi pond bubbled like hot miso. The whispers layer, each anecdote stacking like a thatched roof until you can almost hear them creak under weight of speculation. Tama records the reports with terse strokes. Reverse flow, unconfirmed. Pond bubbles, confirmed 2 witnesses. He then chalks an ideograph seldom used dal, the sign for an omen so large it might eclipse smaller omens. His fingers tremble just once. A mainstream historian strolling by might note this as the textbook pattern preceding an undersea megathrust. Wells drop because groundwater tilts toward ocean. Rivers reverse due to seafloor uplift that temporarily sucks surface water. Ponds exhale methane shaken loose from mud. Modern geology textbooks will cite similar sequences before the 1700 Cascadia event and the 2011 Tohoku quake. Yet for Edo in 1835 such connections remain stitched from observation and guesswork. Scholars today still argue whether these hydrological anomalies are causal precursors or coincidental side effects. The debate fills volumes but offers little comfort here at the brink. You and Tama hurry to Professor Doi at the observatory. He is bent over the Dutch glass seismograph, jaw tight. The stylus has begun twitching at irregular intervals. Tiny pre-shivers he calls needle chatter. He confesses that yesterday's data scroll shows chatter rising exponentially since midnight. Dutch treatises warn this may precede sea plate fractures, but admit false alarms. He shakes head, muttering that classical bureaucrats will brand him fearmonger if he cries wolf twice in one moon. He thrusts the scroll at you. The ink curves upward like a crooked ladder, each rung a new cusp of energy. You add Tama's numbers in margin. Doi's pallor grayens. He knots sash tighter as though courage leaks through seams. The 3 of you convene emergency circle with Magistrate Ishizaka. You find him in a side office polishing his copper horns. He listens, frown deepening until forehead corrugates like Kagaware roof. When you mention Saltcone slump, he lifts eyes. The Castle Terra Compass registered iron filing burst at dawn. Masks and vaults snapped tongues once. He has an informed counsel. Fear of market panic before evidence seals. Bureau politicking becomes quicksand when minutes matter. Argument flares. Doi wants immediate bells. Tama demands river patrols upstream to warn barges. Ishizaka prefers incremental alert. Academic hesitation becomes currency. You lean in, proposing a middle path. A silent readiness order. Hikeshire brigades to stage at riverbanks. Ferry pilots to keep fireboxes extinguished. Children's schools to hold outdoor lessons for the afternoon. No bells yet, only subtle repositioning. Ishizaka nods. Sends courier. Outside, the city's pulse accelerates anyway. Rumor outpaces edict. Porters secure cargo nets double. Courtesans tie elaborate knots in obi believed to counteract stomach flips. Shrine priests set extra buckets near incense altars. A quirky superstition surfaces. Dye makers dump indigo residue outside doorways, claiming the deep blue mud distracts namazu eyes. Indigo puddles dot alleys like bruises. Folklorists will later puzzle over their origin, some attributing to sumptuary recycling. Debate unresolved. You head for Sherbahama salt cones again, via a fast courier skiff crewed by Jen's younger brother Ken, who rose like thunder harnessed to bamboo. Mist thickens until horizon bleeds colorless. Halfway across bay the skiff passes floating memorial lanterns, ghost boats released by superstitious citizens although no festival dates align. Fear rewrites calendars. Shoreline emerges. Salt cones now roped by bamboo stakes, braced against drizzle. Fumi stands sentinel, rake jittering in hand. 3 cones collapsed fully before dawn. She shows broken crusts, ragged compared to neat notch slump. No wind strong enough. She sealed village shrine, posted children on ox track out of tidal zone. You tour stone ear. Pulse stronger, rock vibrates under palm like caged drum. Back in skiff Ken notices tide receding faster than ebb schedule. Mudflats widen, gulls scramble for stranded fish. You urge rowing pace. Waters retreat unnerves oars. Mid-channel, fishing nets sway slack where current once tugged. Something wide and invisible inhales. Approaching Edo proper, watchtowers clang once. Castle horns single blast, then silence. Not full alarm, but acknowledgement something shifted. Streets already semi-deserted. Sandals stacked by gates. You sprint to Nyanbashi. Professor Doi emerges from crowd with stylus scroll flapping. Needle chatter peaked, sudden flatline, then sharp spike. Energy redistributed. He gasps. Either release offshore or major locked segment. Academic shorthand for dice throw. Tama reports wells rose suddenly. Water sloshed over lip. Reverse of earlier drop. He chalks arrow curving upward. Physicists centuries later call this elastic rebound of aquifers after seafloor slip. Ishizaka finally orders full bells. Copper horns bellow across castle. Shrine gongs answer. Reeds blow panicked. Yet crowd mostly already outside, thanks to soft readiness. Perhaps your compromise saved seconds. Then, like giant rude guest kicking house wall, the true quake strikes. Ground heaves sideways, a long beast rolling under planks. Get a piles tumble, indigo puddles splash walls blue. Treble hook tiles above hold, rattling like teeth but staying. Ill skin seems sigh, boards flex. Porcelain bowls installs jitter song, but most remain intact, they practiced. The roar less than what history books paint for 1855, yet stronger than drills predicted. Magnitude high 6, perhaps partial rupture sparing city worst mania. You anchor stance, knees bent, recall Fisher lesson. Street undulates like running on restless barge. Screams mingle with discipline. Bucket water sloshes yet ready. Flutes shriek G-sharp involuntarily as wearers stumble. 3 heartbeats, 5, 12. Shake stretches eternity then ebbs, leaving creeping wobble. Silence follows, punctured by nervous laughter quickly replaced by sobs. Immediate aftermath reveals fires minimal. Water buckets douse lanterns toppled. Roofs mostly intact courtesy of hooks. Only older storehouses show cracks where honeycomb tiles absent. Market awnings ripped, but cargo nets saved rice bales. Crowd checks neighbors. Children report outdoor lessons safe. Livestock bleat outside city, unharmed. Bigger worry, sea. River begins racing seaward, pulling debris like confetti. Everyone's gaze swings east. Castle horns sound second pattern, 3 short, 2 long tsunami risk. You commandeer group of porters to herd market-goers to upper terraces along Temple Hill. Tama leads families with babies toward stone steps. Doi races for observatory to chart water gauges. Ishizaka rides horseback along embankment shouting orders, the bureaucrat now field commander. Minutes later, distant roar deeper than thunder swells. From vantage on Temple Hill you witness bay mouth bulge. Wall of lead-gray water pushing fishing junks backward like toy blocks. But intervening sandbars scatter energy. Wave that reaches Sumida is sizable, not cataclysmic. It breaches lower keys, floods first-floor workshops, sends goats scrambling onto porch roofs, paradoxically safer due to hooks. Shirahama likely took brunt, but salt cones pre-warned. You pray Fumi climbed Shrine Hill. When water retreats, damage tallied. Broken barrels, soaked rice, displaced houseboats, few casualties thanks to drill. Some old piers gone. Their piles become lethal battering rams downstream, yet nets strung purposely last month by well-gilled snare part of debris. Another grassroots innovation proving priceless. Night falls on damp streets smelling of brine and cedar splinters. Citizens light low fires boiling tea for shaken nerves. Shindo Salon convenes outdoors, tables raised on crates above puddles. Ronin Swordreed survived. He claims blade sang perfect pitch midquake, maybe saved him from lunging ironically. Playwright scribbles into notebook, already shaping tragedy comedy, salt that shouted. Porters pour sake, brew unchanged courtesy of barrel lids. They toast survival. Mainstream scholars centuries later will analyze this day's outcome. Hybrid alert network, structural tweaks, drills, and folk precursors collectively lowering casualty curve compared to similar magnitude events. Debate will revolve around causality chains. Was success due to catfish mirror or treble hooks? Did fear propaganda advanced by satirical prints nudge behavior? Papers will battle, footnotes duel. Quirky footnote births tonight. Children discover indigo puddles now patterned into fish shapes by quake ripples. They trace outlines, calling them namazu shadows, then sell paper rubbings to onlookers. Commerce emerges even before water drains. You spend late hours helping Doi gather broken read data, noting which pitches snapped. Salt jar under hostess pillow remained upright. She crows. You jot into notebook, salt jar resilience factors. Compact mass, low center. Tamalog's final well reading, water stable again. He sketches arrow looping like hook. Drop, rise, settle. You paste graph beside stone earpulse. Finally inside room, clay namazu wears droplet crown from window leak. Memento of tsunami spray. You're too tired to mop. Leave as tribute. Ilskin seam along door held. No crack. You crawl onto futon. Body humming echo of ground wave. Weighted charm heavier now, history added mass. Before lamp extinguishes you scratch one line. Tonight Edo listened. Moved. Survived. Proof that fear can rehearse courage. Ink still wet when sleep submerges thought. Rocking gently like receding tide. Whispering promise of rebuilding before next verse of Earth's inexhaustible song. Sunrise comes rose gold and almost shy, as if it, too, tiptoes across the tatami to check for cracks. You step onto the veranda expecting to see a city in tatters. Instead you meet a half-finished symphony of resilience. Rooftop tiles hitching back into alignment, bucket brigades morphing into tea water suppliers, and that goat you saw floating on a porch yesterday now trotting down the main road wearing an improvised sign that reads, Lucky High Ground Guide, Tucson per escort. It shakes its beard at you, utterly unfazed by the night's violence. And you realize Edo has already traded fear for enterprise before the morning bathhouses heat their water. Your first task is damage rounds for Magistrate Ishizaka. Tally wells, rooftops, salt stocks, and, above all, rumor velocity. Tama meets you at the Kanda well, eyes bleary. Rope notch stick tucked behind ear like an ink brush. Waterline sits halfway between the last two dramatic arrows, steadied overnight. The bamboo tube hums a comfortable baritone once more. The well is breathing normally, Tama says. Voice equal parts relief and fatigue. You mark the reading, and the cluster of onlookers murmurs something that sounds suspiciously like a prayer disguised as small talk. Next stop, Professor Doi's observatory, where scrolls of stylus ink hang from rafters like smoked eels. He ushers you to the latest plot. Last night's main spike stands tall, flanked by two diminishing echoes. Aftershocks that rattled street vendors but toppled little. A textbook stress drop, he mutters, already drafting an essay for Nagasaki's journal. His office cat struts across the paper and adds a paw print beside the peak, incidentally highlighting the moment amplitude collapsed. Doi laughs, then wonders aloud if feline claws might be repurposed as microbarometers. You note the new academic debate forming. Whether cat traction on paper can refine seismograph scaling. You journey on, ledger pages flapping, and find Yamabuki supervising carpenters who swap cracked Eve boards for eelskin liners dipped in sealant made from the salt jar you brought her. She credits the skins for preventing major shear splits. She also fesses up that 2 prototype honeycomb tiles fractured in ways she did not predict, sending her back to the kiln with fresh algebra. Engineering, she sighs, is listening to your own mistakes before they lecture you publicly. You document the anomaly and attach one broken shard. Historians will one day squint at its irregular fracture line and argue whether clay density or kiln temperature undermine the lattice. That debate will fuel at least 3 doctoral chapters. Down by the riverside, brewer Umeji drains rain and wave water from cellars, but barrels themselves remain sealed tight. He claims the reed whistles embedded in the lids emitted a perfect chord during the first aftershock, which he has decided to market as Seismic Symphony Sake. A flyer already flaps on his wall. Taste the shake that didn't spill. The porters from Shindo Salon help him haul crates, quoting the line like a pub chorus. You pause on the embankment to watch carpenters retrieve one of the castle's copper horns that worked loose and drifted downstream overnight. Kids scramble after it like a found treasure, eventually hoisting the battered trumpet onto a cart as if lugging a beached narwhal. Some enterprising boy sells splinters of the horn's mahogany mount as thunderwood charms. You sigh, jotting down yet another quirky fact. Disaster debris becomes instant commodity. Edo's earliest instance of souvenir rescue bronze? By midday, the government posts new edicts. Temporary tax relief for homes that installed treble hook tiles before the quake, priority rice deliveries to wards whose wells spiked, and an open invitation for inventors to submit improved alarms, fish-based, reed-based, or otherwise. Bureaucracy, once cautious, now courts innovation like a patron courting a singer. Doi beams, but some samurai clerks grumble. Subsidies mean coffers bleed. The fiscal debate will echo in magistrate corridors for years. The first scholarly pamphlet is already being typeset by Mayo, who discovered printing plates survive both quake and tsunami when stored in watertight clay jars. Late afternoon finds you climbing Shibahama's hill trail with a relief caravan. Tubs of miso, bundles of eel skins, coils of rope. Salt Village escaped the main wave, but their cones lie flattened like stepped anthills. Fumi greets the caravan with a rake in one hand and mourning cloth in the other. Loss of salt stores means lean winter. Yet she refuses charity and instead proposes barter. Crushed salt for Edo's broken tiles. Salt being the very mineral that draws moisture from cracked clay and strengthens patch mortar. Yamabuki nearly leaps with glee at the notion. You draft terms on the spot. 10 sacks of salt fines for every crate of tile shards. A new trade route is born, its ledger lines inked with yesterday's seawater. As dusk pools violet in gullies, a troupe of kabuki actors, still wearing pancake makeup from an aborted performance, wheels in a traveling stage. Tonight they debut Namazu Under the Hooked Roof, featuring a heroic carpenter who lassos a catfish with eel skin and rides it like a comet into the sea, saving Edo from doom. The audience, sprawled on salvaged reed mats, laughs with the brittle gratitude of survivors. You watch the play's final tableau. Actors freeze mid-wave, hands raised above their heads to mimic rooflines locked tight. A silent homage to tiles that did not fly and wells that did not crack. Back in Edo proper, Ishizaka calls an evening assembly on the steps of the partially flooded magistrate hall. Citizens cluster by lantern glow while he reads the first public acknowledgement that folk signs, drills, and hybrid engineering collectively blunted calamity. He cites fish buckets, bamboo reeds, salt cones, and honeycomb tiles in equal measure, and promises an official registry to preserve them. Some scholars will later call this the dawn of Japanese community seismology. Others will insist it was a one-off concession to fear that soon eroded. The ink of that argument begins to flow even before his speech ends. Tama approaches you afterward with a gift. His original rope, now crowded with 3 carved notches. I'll start a new line tomorrow, he says. But let this one rest. It earned retirement. You slide the rope loop around your shoulder. Its coarse hemp scratches in a comforting way, like a tangible essay about vigilance. That night, Shindo Salon hosts a potluck of leftovers turned delicacies. Sake that trembled but didn't spill, miso that traveled upriver like a homing pigeon, and rice steamed with seawater for what a Meiji calls brine authenticity. The Ronin sword reed performs a low tremolo duet with a porcelain bowl cracked into a perfect tuning fork. Doi marks frequencies on a napkin. Tama recites a haiku he wrote during the aftershock. Water drops, shadows rise. Salt sleeps, Catfish wakes. City unfolds its own map. Everyone claps, then adds disclaimers. Academic peer review pending. You leave the gathering just before curfew bells, strolling home through alleys that still smell of iodine and pine ash. Indigo puddles have faded to pale stains shaped like drifting clouds. Children's chalk outlines of namazu shadows gleam under lantern drool. Pump house stripes reflect moonlight, the copper horns now reattached. The city stands, bruised but taller in spirit, as though wooden beams soaked up courage from tidal surge. Up in your room, the clay namazu and treble hook charm rest side by side like two retired wrestlers swapping backstage stories. You place Tama's rope coil between them, a bridge linking subterranean whispers and rooftop clang. Then you open the notebook one last time tonight and write, "History likes to pretend each hero stands alone, but tremors prove the opposite. Beams lean on tiles lean on fishmongers lean on salt rakers lean on scholars, and scholars lean on ropes dipped in well water." The city survives because every trade writes one stanza of the same lullaby. You underline the sentence not for emphasis but propulsion. Tomorrow you will draft a fuller chronicle to share with whoever charts the aftershocks of human ingenuity. Outside, cicadas resume their late-season dirge. A distant carp jumps, splashing a final punctuation mark onto the day. You slide the shoji closed, dim the lamp to a single ember, and let the silence settle like powdered salt. Edo breathes in, breathes out, steadier than before, and you finally allow your own lungs to keep that rhythm. Night drapes its gentlest shawl across the rooftops, and you let your thoughts drift the way lantern reflections drift along a canal. Slow, unhurried, content to shimmer once before folding into darkness. The air has cooled enough that each breath tastes faintly of cedar and sea spray, but the storm-edge tension has slipped from it, replaced by a loose, sleepy hush. You picture the well ropes swaying just a finger's width, the salt cones rebuilding grain by grain, the copper horns resting mute beneath a timid moon, and it feels as though the entire city has crawled into the same futon, shoulder to shoulder, heartbeat to heartbeat. In the distance, a lullaby trickles from someone's shamisen, notes spaced wide, as if the instrument itself is half asleep, and a window shutter clicks shut like an eyelid sealing a dream. You roll onto your side, the tatami warm beneath you, namazu charm nested in your palm, rope coil pillowed beneath your other hand, and let the slow weave of weariness pull you under. Buildings, wells, rivers, and stars all blur into the same velvet canvas, and the last thing you sense is the faint hum of a city that, for all its cracks and creaks, still knows how to cradle its people. Rest settles, deep and uncomplicated,